Board of Trustees of Lamar Consolidated Independent School District is called to order at 5:30 p.m. This is the regular monthly board meeting being held on August 22nd, 2022. We have a quorum with 6 members present. Please join me in a moment of silence to observe as you feel appropriate. All right, please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge to the Texas flag led by Navarro Middle School 6th grader Nathan Arriaga.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Great job, Nathan. Thank you. All right, Dr. Nivens, are there any recognitions or awards?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, we do have Ms. Cole-Hamilton at the podium.
Thank you, Dr. Nivens. Good evening, Board of Trustees and our community members. On Saturday, August 13th, we held our first ever district-wide back-to-school block party. This district-wide event provided a chance for our communities to connect together as one to kick off another great school year. Those in attendance had a chance to engage in educational enrichment activities, meet campus and district leaders to get all of their back-to-school questions answered, as well as enjoy outdoor activities such as inflatables, a rock climbing wall, and so much more. This event was a success for our first year, and it could not have happened without our volunteers and event sponsors. And I'm just going to call their names this evening. These are the sponsors who donated free services so that we could have a successful event. Texas Party Box, they're the balloon photo booth backdrop, Heritage Booth Company, Savoy, Savvy Balloons, Beach House on the Brazos, HEB Spring Green, HEB Richmond Market, Flora Cares, Leaf, Lakewood Church, Reaching Richmond Helping Hands, Christian Bible Fellowship Church, The Rustic Barbershops, Taylor Cuts Studio, A1 Cuts, and Cutting Up Haircuts. Again, we definitely want to give a round of applause and a note of appreciation to those who helped to support this event. In addition, of course, we had all of our campus leaders and district leaders present to man their booths as well. And then lastly, trustees, just want to share that we are proud to be community partners with a number of organizations within our county. And our partnership allows us to leverage opportunities to share information, important information with members of our community. Tonight, we have Ms. Barbara Magana Robertson with the Fort Bend County Fair and Speakers Bureau to personally share some information about the upcoming county fair, as well as opportunities available for our students and to the public. Ms. Magana?
Thank you so much for having me. I do appreciate it. Before we get started, I want to go ahead and just show you a video that we put together to kind of give you a glimpse of what the Fort Bend County Fair is all about.
Fort Bend County Fair in Romeo is filled with Texas-sized fun. Join us at the Fort Bend County Fairgrounds in Rosenberg.
I have showed a rabbit my very first year. That was my junior year. And then I fell in love with it and I wanted to show more. So I decided to do a pig. And I even love that.
Fair time is a tradition, and this year it will be epic. Enjoy 10 days of up-close rodeo action with professional cowboys and cowgirls competing. Premier carnival rides to satisfy any adventure seekers.
This scholarship just opens up so many opportunities for me for my schooling. and I'm just so gracious to be able to accept this and take so many different chances in college that I never would have had the ability to do.
Be sure to come out and cheer on your favorite mutton buster. We've got a barbecue cook-off weekend, top-notch livestock shows, and you'll get your fill of your favorite fair foods. All the fun of the Fort Bend County Fair kicks off with a hometown parade. And for the kids, an interactive activity barn and plenty of attractions to enjoy while you're there. It all benefits scholarships for the youth of Fort Bend County. A homegrown fair. Your family, your friends, and your neighbors. From bull riding action to the junior livestock auction, that's the Fort Bend County Fair and Rodeo. Buy your tickets online at fortbendcountyfair.com.
My mission today is to make sure that everyone, the trustees, your team, your staff, your student body knows that you're invited to come out to the Fort Bend County Fair. We're going to start with a PowerPoint that I presented and I work for you, just to kind of give you an idea of who we are. We run from September the 23rd to October the 2nd this year, and we have over 50 committees. And I scanned the area, and I know some of you have already graced us with your presence as either a committee member or a fair goer, so I thank you. We have over 1,500 volunteers and a very active working board. Our board members, you'll see them in the arenas, in and out of the buildings, but they are very active. You'll see them sweat. Things to keep you in the know. Number one, agriculture is the largest employer in America. That means 1 in 7 Texans are employed by agriculture field or a feeder field. So think about that for a second. Look at what you're wearing today. Is it cotton, or maybe what you drank or ate at lunch? Was it some queso at lunch? That cheese came from some cow's milk somewhere. That cotton came from some farmer's field somewhere. But that truck driver took it to some mercantile, and that became someone's seamstress. It became fashion. So see how many different fields I just described, what the Fort Bend County Fair helps? We gave over $1.4 million committed to Fort Bend County youth through our auctions and our scholarship program. And as you saw, Mia Turner, she was one of your own products here at LCISD. We help all kids. The biggest misconception when it comes to the Fort Bend County Fair is that we only help agriculture kids. That's not true. We help all kind of kids. And the way we help is through our commercial heifer sale, our scored art auction. That's where your art teachers are helping those art students get into the fair program, the school program. Junior livestock auction, the freezer sale. The freezer sales for kids who do not make the junior auction, but are able to still make a profit to either reinvest in their education or another livestock project. We have a great entertainment lineup from the 10-day run of the fair. We have 8 days of live music, so you can come out. There's fun for everybody. But here's the slide that I really want to kind of slow down, and because I only have 5 minutes today, but I want you to get involved. This is how, go ahead and plan to attend. Go to the Fort Bend County Fair. And Dr. Nevins, last year, I know you were out there at the auction, and we saw you, and we were so thankful that you took the time, and you were kind of new, so we're glad that you got out there. Invite your friends, invite your staff and your team members. You can be an auction buyer or be a bidder, or do an add-on. Well, Barbara, what's an add-on? An add-on doesn't matter how much your budget is. It could be $25 or $500. You can add on to a lot. Maybe that's an LCISD student that you know. Maybe it's your neighbor, but you can add on to that sales lot. It's called an add-on, and I can help you out with that. But here's the one thing. Enjoy yourself. Know that you're already showing your support by getting through the gate with your ticket. There's Grapes on the Brazos, which is a wine room. If you want to go out there and get out of the heat and stay in that wine room, there's plenty of opportunities to network and get to know other people and get to know other people from the other sides of the county. There's a food court. There's a lot of nonprofits make their money, and there's a lot of free kid activities for those families that may be on a budget. Any questions? Because I know I was lightning fast on that. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity, Board of Trustees. I appreciate it. Mandy and John, go Vikings. Thank y'all so much.
Thanks for coming. All right, Mrs. Johnson, are there any public comments?
Yes. If you wish to address the board, you must fill out a card and submit it before the presiding officer calls the meeting to order. While speakers generally have 5 minutes to address the board, the presiding officer may establish an overall time limit for comment and adjust the time allotted to each speaker when necessary to accommodate a large number of speakers. However, no speaker shall be given less than 1 minute. All of this is in compliance with HB 2840. Each speaker tonight will have 5 minutes. While the board values hearing from members of the public, trustees may not respond to comments as they are prohibited by law from discussing or deciding any subject that is not on the board's publicly noticed agenda. Speakers having complaints against individual district employees or trustees may only address the board after filing a complaint form and in the manner provided for in board policy DGBA, employee complaints, F&G, student and parent complaints, GF, public complaints. The presiding officer or designee shall determine whether a speaker has filed a complaint according to policy. Any speakers who complain of individual district employees or trustees during public comment will be directed by the presiding officer to stop addressing the board and will refer the speaker to the appropriate complaint policy. Please state your name when you come forward. Tonight, our first speaker is Craig Latoul.
Dr. Nivens, board members. I'm going to put on these glasses so I look more mature and see the page. I'm here to address. I served on the Citizens Bond Committee and was proud to do that. And I saw the tapes of the meetings that y'all had before. I viewed both of those, and so I want to take my hat off to Greg Buchanan. He ran a really good meeting, and I wanted to address that and tell y'all that he did. So I am represented by Joy Williams out of District 4. So, and I wrote down a few notes. I didn't think I'd be nervous in front of this crowd. I stand in front of Baptist all the time, and I can't believe this crowd makes me nervous. But anyway, after hearing the concerns that were in the meetings, and I went out into the public, as many of you know me, I'm in the public a lot. I'm involved in our community, and I talked to lots of folks. And to Dr. Niven's point, when they asked me what we did at the bond committee meeting, I told them, and when I told them what the needs of the community were going to be as far as building buildings and schools and that sort of thing, and then when I mentioned we were going to be nearing the B word, we know what the B word is, right, Dr. Niven? And many of them gasped. And so to that point, I wanted to give y'all some constructive, what I think is constructive feedback. The people that I've talked to over these last few months since that bond meeting, they all said to me the same thing, every one of them. And they were from a cross-section. Some of them were just blue-collar people that I know sort of, kind of, and some are people that I know really well. They all believe that our children need to be educated and have a good, solid public education system. And that the other thing was that teachers need to be paid more money. I'm sure Ms. Dansinger would agree with that. And that extracurricular activities, when I talked about the pools and even the stadium, which I think we need, they felt that the needs of building good, solid school buildings, and many of them, as we know, because the district's growing, are going to be very necessary. To that point, I strongly recommend to you all the following. That we, moving forward with this bond, that we kill the idea, how about remove the Performing Arts Center at $193 million from our discussion and from the voting rolls. That we push for schools, that we push for Stadium number 2. Stadium number 2, for those in this room behind me that don't know, Lamar Consolidated has one stadium. The district right near us has 2 stadiums, and we're going to be nearing the same number of schools and high schools. So that stadium and it's gonna be an astronomical cost because of all the things that we see. I'm in the construction business. I see this every single day. Prices are outrageous, so get used to it. We need that stadium. And considering dropping some of these new pools. Now, I implore you, ladies and gentlemen, to talk to your architects and engineers who are designing these buildings. We've seen some beautiful school buildings out there being built as we speak, as we stand before you today. We got beautiful buildings. I implore you to talk to those engineers, those designers, and have them consider tilt wall construction. Tilt wall construction, and I'm happy to find some addresses and give them all to you, and you can tour some of those buildings. Tilt wall construction is faster, it's stronger, and the shell itself, I'm not talking about the building inside, but the shell itself can be built for somewhere from half to quarter, 25% less money than the current kind of construction we're doing now. Now look, the construction is beautiful with all the brick and the way we design these exterior walls and these fancy claddings and all these things we do. None of those things educate children. That is my plea to you today, ladies and gentlemen, and if you want to talk more about it, I know we can't talk about it in front of this, that's not why I'm here, but I did want to tell you that I was proud to serve on this bond committee meeting and hope to do so again. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Michael Sherman.
I'm Michael Sherman. I'm back again. Mentioned before that I'll be here taking my 5 minutes every month. This has been over a year that I have been asking for this administration to correct wrongdoing by several of its administrators, and I feel that they just keep digging a hole deeper and deeper. The last communication I received from the administration in this district was that their investigation found no wrongdoing. That's despite the fact that I had undeniable proof that there was a collusion and an effort to defame me, and that was done without regard to any sense of any truth. The fact that the administration's last message was that they conveyed, it bothers me because you're getting ready to vote and ask for votes on budgets and bonds. Tonight you're having a budget meeting. You're going to be asking for bonds. I know the gentleman was up here and discussing schools. Obviously, we need schools. I have a real problem when the level of dishonesty and the level of I want to say the degree to which the truth is trying to be hidden in my particular situation. It bothers me when we're talking about $1 billion in bonds. It bothers me when we're talking about budgets. Anybody who stands by idly while this collusion and attempts to reframe a series of dishonorable, dishonest, and harmful events, they should really reconsider their public service. I know the gentleman, since he was up here and he made his claim, and I'm guessing that he was talking about he wanted a stadium more than he thought. I think he said a performing arts center. I think the CTE center is what's on what is being proposed, and I don't know, performing arts, CTE. I think I'm just gonna throw this out, and this is just completely because of a response. I feel a need. You've got to count your entire population, not just athletes. And I saw it in my 5 years that I served in this district, that sometimes the performing arts and sometimes the trades are not given nearly as much attention, but their population percentages, I think you'll find would weigh that you should push for both Performing Arts Center, if that was going to be proposed, and definitely a CTE center, because we all know that that is what the students of Lamar need. I understand the stadium because of the number of schools, but that can be handled on at a different time. You're under $1 billion budget trying to keep things under that level. And like I said, it just took me away from what my message was, but I feel a need to say that a Performing Arts Center or a CTE, especially a CTE center, you really need to consider that, because you have populations that are not heard as much as you might hear from athletes who play football or baseball or might be interested in athletics. So I'd ask you to consider that. Finally, I want to just say that I'm going to be here every month. You're waiting for me to file a lawsuit, and I'm waiting for you to apologize and make this right. And I'm going to be here every month. And I shouldn't have to pay money in order to get that. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Shauna Zach.
Hi, I'm Shauna Zach. I'm a teacher at Lamar High School. I've been teaching at the district for 15 years. I would like to speak tonight about the communication in the district. Communication by the district has been lacking. For instance, with the issue of security on campus, the district still is yet to communicate with the community about the changes in security on campuses. As our superintendent referenced in his convocation speech, people are all over social media talking about the loss of SROs on campuses, which has resulted in a number of social media talking about, which has resulted in a number of rumors circulating as to why the change is occurring, as well as what the specific changes are. People are saying all SROs are gone, some are moved to other campuses, and all kinds of other things. Accurate communication from the district could alleviate a lot of worries for staff and especially parents as to what these changes are and why they are being made. Furthermore, communication that was previously a part of LCISD in the form of consultation questions for the last 30 years has been removed upon recommendation from our superintendent. These were an opportunity for campus staff to ask questions of the district in which the answers were to be facilitated by the superintendent. We were told that questions were too negative in tone and that questions did not pertain to the job of the superintendent. In regard to the negative tone cited for these questions, as an English teacher, I can say we toned down these questions significantly from how they were submitted to us originally. I am not sure how to put a positive spin on concerns that range from teacher conference time not being honored to out-of-control class sizes, especially at the secondary level. In relation to the questions being asked of the superintendent, the questions have always been meant for upper administration at Brazos Crossing, not for the superintendent alone. When we were told that we should send the questions to the department they relate to, this information is near impossible to find on our district website as it is extremely user-friendly. Staff on my campus have voiced that they are extremely frustrated to have lost an avenue of transparency with the district through the loss of consultation questions. This would have been an avenue of clarification on the district decision to implement a hiring freeze and riffing teachers to other campuses, while also putting staff transfers to other campuses on hold. In his convocation speech, our superintendent seemed frustrated by the negativity and false information being spread, but if the district does not communicate why these decisions are being made, then how can parents and staff trust that the district is keeping their best interest in mind? I make the suggestion that these kinds of decisions are communicated and made transparent, and that we bring consultation questions back in the form they were previously. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dawn Hopkins.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Nivens. My name is Dawn Hopkins and I teach at Dickinson. Thank you, first of all, to the board for all of our raises. We appreciate it very much. I have been the treasurer for Lamar Classroom Teachers Association for many years. I'm a past president. I also am in charge of the Teacher of the Year, Teacher and the Pair of the Year banquet. I want you to mark your calendars for April 19th. That's when we're going to, and I did communicate that with Ms. Nimick. So we hope that you all can be there. Also, I hope you enjoy reading your classroom magazine from Texas Classroom Teachers Association. Our organization is very happy to have that subscription for you. I am a 25-year member of Lamar Classroom Teachers Association. I would also like to see the process of meeting with the superintendent for consultation questions. I would like to see that happen again. This was a way for us to keep our communication open between the staff and the superintendent. We do not feel that our voices are being heard, and many staff feel frustration because we don't know where to turn if we have a question. Sometimes our administration, our principal just might not know the answer, and if we look on the organizational chart on Dr. Niven's website, on his LCISD page, it's not updated. There are still past employees that are on that page. I just would like to thank you for all of your hard work that you do for all of our staff and all of our students. Thank you.
That is all, Mr. President.
All right, are there any board member reports?
Yeah, I believe that the block party that the administration helped, the help administration put on, I believe that was the brainchild of you, Dr. Nivens, is that correct? I think that was excellent, and you guys did a great job. And I'd also like to thank all the sponsors that donated items and services. I went to the Wessendorf Parent Night, Terry High School, Reading Junior High, and Wright Junior High, all the parent orientation nights. And just wanted to give a shout out to those principals and the staffs of those districts. You guys did a great job. This was a couple days ago in the last 2 weeks. It's kind of giving parents an orientation and giving the students a chance to get back in the building and meet some of the teachers. So those are the 4 that I was able to go to.
I know we've all been very busy these last couple of weeks, especially with, like you said, the block party was so much fun, and the new teacher or new staff stampede, I like the new name. And even though it was storming weather, so many people showed up, which was nice. And a shout out to everyone who put together a convocation of everyone, which I said I don't think has been done in over 30 to 35 years, because I'm trying to remember the last time, and it had to be at Lamar High School. And I still think we split secondary and primary in the elementary. So kudos to getting that done. I do want to say that I did get a chance to the first week of August. They had the new teachers to the district and the novice academy, and then the next day all the new teachers. And I always enjoy going and starting to get familiar with the teachers and seeing some of the ones that this is their first job and they look like a deer in headlights, and they come out of there still looking a little lost, but I know that they're being well taken care of by our mentors, and they'll move forward and do an excellent job with our schools. And I did get a chance to go by Phelan Elementary today, and it was running smoothly. It's one of our newest schools, and it's beautiful, and it's a testament of what we do, and that we educate our kids, but we give them a very clean, calming school is what I felt like, the colors or whatever. It's just very relaxing in there, and I think that's very good for our kids. And last, I just want to say, I'm in different organizations, and Dr. Nivens was nice enough to attend our retired teachers, Fort Bend County retired educators. We have what's called a not going back to school breakfast. And it's a lot of fun, and if you give a lot of retired teachers free breakfast, they show up. So we had about 70 people show, And Dr. Nivens and Curtis Rhodes came, and he answered a lot of questions, and you were a big hit. And then this past Saturday, there's an honorary teacher society called Delta Kappa Gamma, and we had our Area 4 workshop. And again, thank you, Mr. Buchanan, to open up Randall High School. It was beautiful, and these teachers are coming from Victoria and Wharton and Lake Jackson, and they walk into our school and that facility, and they were pleasantly surprised. So, and thank you for greeting them. They were very happy to meet you too, and I appreciate you taking time out of your weekends and your busy schedule to come meet the past teachers of LCISD.
We got some great students. I got to meet Corey with the Loco Snow Cones. He's a junior at Foster, and he's a student that wanted to start his own business to help pay for college. And so I got to hire his company and got to spend some time talking to him. And so give a shout out to one of our students that said, you know what, I'm going to do something and productive and all that. So shout out to Corey. Back to school, block party was awesome. I got to spend the morning today at Jane Long Elementary and Terry High School, just helping some students get into the doors. And so to see their smiles on their faces and some of those kindergartners walking in for the first time saying like, are you ready? And they're like, no, not quite. And I'm like, well, you got this. And just to know that our teachers and our administration and our staff are taking care of all of our babies, you know. So I thank you for all of the teachers and admin and school support and everyone that was on campus today, making sure today was awesome.
I just wanted to tell everybody how great Dr. Nivens did at the Katy Area Chamber, what was it called? State of the Schools. He did a great job. Great speech. Everybody liked it.
Went to the new staff stampede. Great job by Leaf. There was a ton of energy in the room. It was really uplifting. Convocation, I completely agree. Having everybody there was just awesome. A lot of energy, and it was great. And we talked about this, but I don't think we could talk about it enough, is just the unbelievable progress that our teachers and our academic staff made to get us to A rating again for the district, and some phenomenal results on the campus level. It's not just administration, it's not just teachers, it's everybody from top to bottom put in a lot of hard work. So great job to everybody.
So ditto for all of these different events. They were fantastic. And at the block party, it was funny because I just envisioned a few blow up things on the field and, you know, a good time. And when I walked in, I was emotional about it because it was so amazing. And so everybody just went above and beyond, and seeing like even the classic cars lined up. I mean, I don't even think I'm hearing of things that I missed because it was so grand. And I think I told Dr. Jones, I saw him and I'm like, this was way more than I expected. And so again, well done, Dr. Nivens, for, and when I was talking to Dr. Nivens, he's like, next year, it's even, I mean, he was already planning the more grand for next year. I'm like, man, this is already so fantastic. So I know that everybody had a piece in that. And so I appreciate that. It really felt like community, and that's part of our strategic plan, is to make it that small town home feeling, and it felt like that. And so it was wonderful. And then convocation, again, like everybody said, was so good, and the energy and just Dr. Nivens' pants. I mean, that's hard to beat.
Explain that a little more.
You're right, yes.
Don't just leave it there.
You're right, that needs explanation. But they had every logo of every school on them, and they were fantastic. And so that was and we did have a safety and security meeting, and so thank you to our police department for the update. I know we can't share a lot of that information for obvious reasons, but it's really good that we have community members that come in from different areas, and so we're all working together to really constantly improve on our security. So I'm always grateful to be a part of that conversation.
And since it's the start of the new school year, I just wanted to also remind some of our constituents, all 7 of us, Mr. Hubenak, I think would agree as well, is that we are all here for our constituents. And so we genuinely care about what is happening with our teachers, with our students, with the parents. And so I really encourage you all to use our emails, our board emails, if you have questions. Sometimes it's difficult to do things on social media, and I know everybody doesn't understand our roles, but our top 3 things are policy. We create policy, we set the budget, and set the superintendent goals every year. And so I recently had a comment that it was boring talking about the policy, and why do we drone on sometimes about policy and our meetings? That's one of our main jobs. And so I hope, I know it's not interesting to everyone, but it's very important, and we take it. And when there's certain words out there that can change policy, we're the ones that have to decide and make sure it's for everybody's best interest. So I just wanted to remind everybody, because I know they don't get to see all the things that we do and hear, but this is our one time each month to get to discuss these things, and so we just take it really seriously. And also, I would encourage everyone to be courageous, especially teachers and parents. When you see something that you may have a concern about or a question, just to ask. And when we respectfully ask things, people are very willing to share that information. And I know our administration, I mean, again, they go above and beyond what I ever expect. I mean, sometimes there's a question and Dr. Nivens just calls somebody personally. I know everybody here takes the time and they really want to educate people, but people have to ask. And so please don't ever be afraid to ask us. And especially when the kids see us advocating for things, it teaches them that they need to advocate for themselves and they can be respectful and ask questions. So I just want to remind everybody of that going into this school year, that we are here for y'all. We give up our time because we are here for y'all. And so I encourage y'all to ask. So that is it.
All right, thank you, Ms. Williams. Dr. Nivens, is there a superintendent report?
Yes, sir. Well, I appreciate everyone's feedback about the back-to-school block party and convocation. Those were both a labor of love from our team, and so I know Dr. Jones headed up our back-to-school block party and that whole committee and setting all that up, and of course, communications team set up our convocation, and so we appreciate. And they were the lead of those, but it's probably 100 different people on those committees taking care of that. And so I appreciate that. We do want to do things big in Lamar CISD because I think our students and our staff deserve big. And so as we talked about in convocation, the mediocre mindset is not something that we want in our school district, that we want to be excellent in every single way. And so we just think our students deserve that. And so I'm really proud of the team and the turnout, and a lot of great feedback from the community and staff about, especially the block party and convocation, because I know some people were kind of weary about the change and what it was going to look like, and then when they got there and saw what it was going to look like and the energy and the free haircuts and everything else that's happening at the back-to-school block party, it was nothing but positive feedback. So I'm really appreciative that we're able to do those types of things for our community and our students. And as I say, speak life into those situations. So just a little bit of data for you. Today was the first day of school, and I don't know how many campuses I made, maybe 12 campuses this morning or today. We started at 7 and finished up at around 2, 3 o'clock. And so our goal is to hit every single campus this week. And so we'll do that. So I have some snacks in the car to make sure I don't fall out. But having a good time, and every campus that I walked on and every campus I got a report from just had a extremely smooth start to the school year. And so, and again, that's a testament to our staff because, as I've said, and as President Hunt said, just on the other side of the pandemic, you still have an A rating. It just shows that the work ethic of our staff, and it shows the resilience of our students and our parents. So I want to say a special shout out to everyone that's on the campus, in central office and not on the campus, in transportation and child nutrition, because it takes us all to make sure that our students are taken care of every single day. And so today is the first day of school, and our enrollment today was, our enrollment is actually 41,814 students. Today present, we had about 40,175 students. Last year this time, first day of school, we had 36,930 students. So between last year and this year, we've added an additional 3,200 students to the roster. To the roster, which is good news. Because as I've always said, they won't have a staff that loves them better than we do, and so I'm really appreciative of parents choosing Lamar CISD. And then just kind of my week in the last week and this week. Of course, I said this week I'll be making every campus. Last week though, we called a meeting with our district student improvement committee, and so talked through all the district-wide decisions that we worked out over the summertime. And we're going to use that group as our key communicator group. It's about how many folks on that committee? Maybe close to 50 people on that committee. And so we use them as our key communicators, but also travel. And so we're also planning our tours for the spring to talk to the teachers and the parents of the year at each track. And so also to be able to get questions and answers and communicate to them that way. And then also we'll continue with our non-campus staff one-on-one and cluster meetings as well. And so we get a lot of feedback from a lot of different folks. And so you'll see a couple things tonight when we talk about the budget, some feedback that we got, and so how it was able to help us impact the budget. And so we'll keep moving forward. But I just want to say thank you to our principals and our teachers and our students for such a great day today.
All right, and just to provide a roadmap, what I expect for us to do in this meeting is, because the biggest item that's probably going to take up the most amount of time, and we want to have plenty of time to discuss it, is the bond. We're going to do the public hearing on the budget. We're then going to do the consent agenda. Then there's 2 action items. We're going to take on the first action item, which is TASA TASB delegate and alternate. Then we have a couple of items in closed session, which should not take too long. And then the one remaining item would be the bond. So at this time, we'll open the public hearing to discuss the budget and proposed tax rate for the 2022-2023 school year at 6:12 p.m. And we will first have a presentation.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. Dr. Nevins. This evening, I'd like to present the 2022-23 budget public hearing and describe some little things about our budget. I'd like to start by reminding everyone that the 3 budgets that will require official adoption by the Board of Trustees are the ones for the General Fund, the Debt Service Fund, and the Child Nutrition Fund. Lamar CISD adopts the budget at the functional category level. The functional category level refers to TEA's required uniform structure of account coding and describes the focus for the expenditures. Any amendments that are made during the year that cross functional levels require specific board approval. I'd like to start by talking about the general fund. In the revenue area, our budget is at $397.9 million, roughly. $218.2 million of that being property tax revenue, and then $152.4 million of that being state aid. Property taxes are about 55% of the budget, and state aid about 38%, so 93% of the budget is made up of those 2 areas. Focusing on property taxes, the M&O rate that we're using for modeling is 0.8546 cents per $100 valuation. Other local revenues reported in the general fund are investment earnings, donations, facility rental proceeds, athletic revenues, and then other miscellaneous smaller types of revenue. The projected total of the local revenue portion of the general fund budget is a little over $222 million for this year, or right at 56%. Property taxes, of course, make up a large amount of that. We work with the Fort Bend Central Appraisal District to determine the best estimate of values to use for budgeting. We're using 100% of the values that are approved by the Appraisal Review Board and 90% of those that are still under review by the ARB. As you can see, our property values are up approximately 24% this year over last year, and that's at the date of certification. The average growth over the last 5 years previous to that is a little bit over 7%. So you can see where it starts ramping up toward the last couple years. Also, the preliminary net taxable values adjusted for over 65 and disabled persons freeze values is $23 billion. We're using a taxable value for budgeting of $22.9 billion. Current year taxes are estimated at $216.6 million for the general fund, and that's using a $40,000 homestead exemption, which is the new value this year, up from $25,000. Delinquent tax collections are estimated at $1.6 million, and penalty and interest collections are estimated at $900,000. So from taxes alone, we're looking at $219.1 million. In the area of state revenues, the largest category is from the state funding formula. From that, we get foundation school program money and per capita revenue. The total is $152.4 million. We also have to budget for TRS on behalf payments, and that budget is $20 million. And then we have some other smaller miscellaneous grants. The projected total of state revenues in the general fund is $172.4 million for this year, or about 43.33% of total estimated revenues. A smaller category of revenues within the general fund are from federal sources, mainly indirect cost reimbursements, SHARS and MAC, which are Medicaid programs, and then ROTC reimbursements. This year, we're budgeting $3.425 million, or about 0.86% of your total estimated revenues. Moving to the expenditure side of the budget, it is at $397.1 million, with the largest of that right at 84.5% being salaries and benefits at $335.6 million. And then the next largest category would be professional and contracted services at 8.63%, or a little over $34 million. That would also include utilities and things like that. As you can see from that, our expenditure and revenue budgets are about $770,000 apart, with revenue ahead. So we have a balanced budget, as we usually do, for this year. Within this budget, I'd like to also talk about the compensation plan. Our compensation plan is in the form of a booklet, and it includes all positions and pay categories authorized by the board. It includes rates of pay for supplemental duties and part-time employees also. The pay schedules contained in the plan are the teacher hiring schedule, pay grade tables, and there's several of those, administrative, clerical, technical, manual trades, stipends, athletic event payment schedules, fine arts event schedules, rates of pay for substitutes, administrators, paraprofessionals, and also part-time employees. New for the 22-23 school year is a beginning teacher salary of $61,000, raises for all returning staff, and the teachers and employees paid according to the teacher hiring schedule. We're proposing a flat raise of $1,950, which is an average of 3%, and then a 3% of midpoint raise for all other staff. New pay grade tables with increases for child nutrition, those are hourly staff members, custodial staff, and instructional paraprofessionals are also being proposed. A special education stipend program based on some program changes. Ms. Mathis will be coming up shortly to talk about that in a little bit more detail. And we're also including $500 in stipends for new teachers and a $500 stipend for returning teachers, but that will actually be paid for with ESSER funds. Moving to the debt service fund. This fund is used to pay the principal and interest on bonds. It's paid for with a separate component of the tax rate. Revenues for this year are $103.3 million, with property taxes being the largest piece of that at $98.2 million. Bond principal, interest, and fees this year are budgeted at $102.2 million, with bond principal being right at $30 million and bond interest being at $72.6 million. We'll be adding a small amount of money to our fund balance in that fund in order to either pay down principal or to control the tax rate in coming years. Speaking of the tax rate, the current 2021 tax rate, which has funded the 21-22 fiscal year, is $1.24 roughly. The M&O rate this year is 87 cents, and the interest and sinking fund rate is 37 cents. The proposed rate for 22-23 is the same, 1.242 or $1.24. The M&O rate will be a little over 85 cents, and the interest and sinking rate at 0.3874. As you can see, we've had a good tax rate history for the last few years, and it's been steadily declining. And it's been at $1.24 the last couple years, with it being $1.32 in 2021. Moving to the Child Nutrition Fund, it's a self-balancing fund or a self-supporting fund. It's estimated this year at $24.88 million. The revenues are generated from breakfast and lunch sales, federal reimbursements, and expenditures are typical, salaries and benefits, food costs, supply costs, and then capital outlay. Similar to the general fund, the payroll and benefits are the biggest chunk of that at $12.7 million, but supplies and materials are right behind that at $12.3 million. With that, I'd like to ask Ms. Mathis to come up and talk a little bit about the stipend program.
Good evening, President Hunt, Board of Trustees, Dr. Nivens. It's a really exciting time right now to be able to have this proposal for our special education teachers, paraprofessionals, and administrators. What we are currently looking at is making some changes to our programs in order to better meet the needs of our students by not having vacancies in our programs, and also being able to better serve them through higher pay with our teachers and our paraprofessionals, because they work really hard. With the shortage of teachers we've seen over and over again, it's difficult to fill those positions, and our kids are not having consistency in the classroom. We have substitutes and things like that. And so we're hoping that this plan will help attract some people to us, especially in the paraprofessional area. And so what we're looking at is in our programs where we have had to make some combinations where there were vacancies, providing teachers with a stipend of $7,000, our paraprofessionals $5,000, and our administrators $4,000. This is in addition to what teachers already receive in those self-contained classrooms, which is a stipend of $3,000. In addition to that, we are also looking to add a stipend for all of our special education paras, even in other programs. And so in our self-contained programs that are not in combination of another program due to the vacancies, those paras will get a $1,500 stipend, and then our resource and inclusion paras will get a $1,000 stipend. Currently, our inclusion teachers do not receive a stipend at all. And so with this plan, we are proposing that they will receive a $2,000 stipend. And this makes us very competitive with our surrounding districts. In addition to that, we are also looking at the fact that we are having a difficult time retaining staff with our assessment staff, such as educational diagnosticians, school psychologists, speech pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists. And so we're also looking to add a $3,000 stipend for the speech pathologist, and then with our DIAGs and LSSPs, a $4,000 stipend. We have other paraprofessionals that are very special in nature. We have our deafblind interveners, and they have a very unique role. And so we are looking to give them a $5,000 stipend as well. Do you have, sorry. Based on how we are doing this, it is because we combined some programs. And so we were able to take the funds that were utilized with that combination to create the funds to be able to do this. So this isn't an increase in our budget. Actually, with this plan, we will have a remaining budget of $394,000 still left to be able to add additional staff if that's necessary, or whatever needs we have within the department. And then the last page here is just a summary of what I've said already, because it's kind of confusing because it's a lot of numbers on the page. And so just in summary, we are providing, again, stipends that range anywhere from $1,000 to $7,000 for our staff. And the goal is to be able to retain our teachers and also be able to attract additional staff to Lamar CISD.
So, question. You said our special ed teachers currently get a $3,000 stipend. So now they will get, this is approved, they'll get a $10,000 stipend as a special ed teacher in our district.
In some cases, yes, sir. So this is very exciting.
And in the budget committee, we had some lengthy conversations about this, and we revamped our committee process so that we can have these more robust conversations. And so I really enjoyed this process and commend the administration for putting together a proposal that, you know, we're talking about unboxing LCISD. This is thinking outside the box. But the reason that we put this together was that there were a number of vacancies in special education. There were, how many paraprofessionals were we down?
It's close. It was close to about 80 or so.
Yeah, and it's across districts. And this, I think, is showing the community, showing our special education teachers, and hopefully showing folks outside of our district that we value our special education teachers, and we're putting the money where our mouth is. And this is a really great program, so I appreciate your work on it.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Mr. Welch.
I have a question. I have two questions. One, I know that the formula is a little complicated for the layman like myself of how a school district is completely funded and at what point a school district has to give money back to the state in what used to be called the Robin Hood, or I think it's called recapture now. Are we anywhere close to that in Lamar?
There were several years that we were very close to that, but at this point in time, we're not even considered a gap district.
My second question is about...
It's really because of our rapid growth.
My second question is about the bond rate. The bond rate so overall, we're not going to increase the tax rate if we take the administration's proposal. Is that going to be good next year if the $1 billion bond, the total of $1 billion passes on the November 2022 ballot?
There are a lot of things that will factor into that, especially the most important ones being the length of time that we take to issue the bonds, the interest rates that we get, when we sell the bonds, the property value growth rate, and those types of things. We think that we've been conservative, but not overly conservative or overly aggressive in modeling some of the different bond propositions and combinations of them. We think that there are certain situations where we could issue the bonds in certain amounts and not have to raise the total rate. There are certain, and we'll discuss that in more detail later on, but yes, there are some situations where we could issue bonds without increasing the total tax rate. One other thing that's going to factor into the calculation is the tax rate compression in the maintenance and operations rate. We're also factoring that into these calculations. So there's a lot of variables, but in certain scenarios it is possible.
I would encourage the administration to find those ways, because I attended one of the 2 citizen bond workshops, and it was emphasized over and over again that we can go up to $1 billion and not have to raise the tax rate. So I think that's going to be paramount, depending on what actually passes here tonight and what passes on the November ballot. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank you and Ms. Reynolds and Ms. Dawson, because I know y'all, and whoever's worked on all this, because I know balancing a budget of this size and this time is a lot of work. So thank y'all so much for getting that done for us. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yes, we had a collaborative process this year, and campuses, campus leaders, administrators, everyone participated this year. So it's been an interesting process, but we got there.
I know that not every district can say that right now, and so I know it's a big deal. So I celebrate y'all because I appreciate it very much. I hope all the taxpayers do as well.
Thank you. Anything else?
Any other comments or discussion? All right, thank you, Ms. Ludwig. We will close the public hearing at 6:31 p.m. This time, we'll take action on the consent agenda. Are there any items that the board would like to pull at this time? O. All right, we'll pull O. Any other items?
You said O, correct?
Mm-hmm. Okay, may I have a motion to approve the current consent agenda with the exception of item O? Mr. Lambert moves, Ms. Williams seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. May I have a motion to approve item O, which is on page 117? Is there a motion to approve item O, which is considering approval of the request for the 2022 historic site exemption qualification for the Simonton School?
Ms. Lowe was coming to the podium if trustees have any questions about this item.
Has anything changed since last year?
Nothing has changed since last year.
Okay, so this is the same one that comes to us every year?
Correct.
Okay.
But they do not meet our requirements, correct?
They meet the requirements of the comptroller's office, but because it's used as a residence, typically the board has denied the request.
Thank you.
Good. All right, is there a motion to approve the administration's recommendation that the Board of Trustees deny the request for the 2022 historic site exemption qualification for the Simonton School? Ms. Williams moves. Is there a second? Mr. Welch seconds. All right, is there any discussion? All those?
It's to deny.
To deny.
Okay, just making sure I'm on the right page.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion which would deny the exemption, please raise your hand and say aye. Any opposed, say no. All right, the motion carries. All right, at this time, we will take on the first action item 10A. This is considering the approval of the nomination of candidate for a position as delegate and alternate on the TASB Delegate Assembly. Correct, in September. Are there any nominations or discussions? Somebody can nominate.
I nominate Zach Lambert.
And I
I've already done it, so I think you should
You
have the
need to
pleasure.
at least observe it, if not as.
You need to be punished. I mean,
Is
I mean,
either-
you need the privilege.
You either
Privilege.
need to be the delegate or the alternate.
It's an important position, but I've already done it, so I appreciate it, but I nominate you.
Well, we also have an opening for alternate.
Ms. Williams.
Sounds like a yes. You accept.
No, Ms. Danziger expressed interest in being the alternate, so I would
Okay.
nominate Ms. Danziger for the alternate.
I'll give you the bathroom breaks.
Okay, so there is
Sorry, yes.
there is a nomination of Mr. Lambert. As
So since her mic wasn't on, it doesn't count, right?
I'll say it again.
There is a nomination of Mr. Lambert as delegate. Do you accept?
I do accept.
There was a nomination of Ms. Williams as delegate. Do you accept?
I do not accept it.
And I heard a nomination of Ms. Danziger as alternate. Do you accept?
I do accept.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of this slate of Mr. Lambert as delegate and Ms. Danziger as alternate, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Pull that, Mark.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. All right, we will now skip action item 10B, considering approval of the order calling for a bond election, and have reports and presentations on the information items. Okay, so information items, Dr. Nivens.
Yes, sir, we have one. We have our Canvas update, and so we have Mrs. Katie Martino to come up and present the board with our Canvas update.
Good evening, President Hunt, Board of Trustees, Dr. Nivens. I'm here this evening to talk with you about our Canvas learning management system, our online learning management system, and provide you with an update on the work that's been done this last year and the plans for 22-23. So I'm going to start with just a review of this last year. In July of 2021, the board tasked the team with doing a community survey to gather feedback on how we were utilizing Canvas. We did that survey in July of 2021, and the key feedback that we received was that parents, stakeholders wanted to make sure homepages, Canvas homepages on classes and courses had similar content and important core information that was easy to find, that Canvas courses were organized in an efficient way, that Canvas teachers were using the calendar to post major events, and that communication in Canvas was timely, that students would receive feedback on assignments submitted, and that teachers would be sending messages using announcements and communicating with parents using Canvas. And so in August of last year, we used that community feedback to put together Canvas expectations, and those expectations are in your board book. I'm going to walk through them again this evening. Those Canvas expectations were shared with campus administrators at the start of last school year, 21-22. Those expectations remain the same as we move into 22-23. In addition to sharing the Canvas expectations through the Canvas support course, we added the Canvas expectations to our LCISD instructional handbook. So just a quick aside, we rolled out an instructional handbook for all staff this year that was new to LCISD, and it contains all of the non-negotiables, the expectations, so that there's consistency from campus to campus and school to school. And so we're excited about that work of love that happened over this last year, and the Canvas expectations are part of that work. So it incorporated all of the different pieces of what we're looking for in good, high-quality instruction. We revisited these Canvas expectations with administrators during administrative training, which was day 3 of admin retreat at the beginning of the month. And so all of our team members now should be very clear on these expectations. And so let's just walk through them really quickly. Starts with the Canvas course expectation, homepage expectations. Every Canvas course will include teacher contact information, a current picture of the teacher, class schedule information. So when is the teacher off for their conference period? When is a good time to contact them? When did the class have lunch, specials, etc. A little bit of information about the teacher, kind of a get to know you. Some teachers might include a video, others might include a short biography. And then we want to make sure that all student courses are published and updated so that the work that the teacher is putting out, students that have access to it from day one. The next section is that we're organizing using modules. And so we want to make sure we have a course module at the very top of every course that has general expectations for the course with rules, procedures, general course information. And again, that's going to be housed at the top of the screen. And then we're going to use modules to chunk information in a very organized way. So every instructional block, whether that's an instructional week or instructional day, depending on how the course is being used, is separated into a module. And the modules will be organized chronologically with the newest information at the top. So students, teachers, parents can go back to old information, but everything is at the top that they need right now. The next section in the Canvas expectations has to do with communication using announcements and calendar events. Teachers and administrators will post regular announcements to Canvas. Stakeholders, parents, students have the opportunity to choose whether they get announcements using email. So if announcements posted, it'll be posted in Canvas. You can choose whether you get that through an email as well to be notified. Teachers will use the announcements and use the Canvas calendar to post major events, major assignments, major grades. And they will also make sure if they're assigning work through Canvas that they add a due date, because then that due date will make sure that the announcement or that the assignment will be posted on the Canvas calendar. The next section relates to feedback. Constructive feedback will be given on assignments submitted in Canvas using the Canvas speed grader. We want to make sure we're also using the message who function in the Canvas gradebook to send direct messages. For example, on the student side, we can send a message to any students in a class who might be missing an assignment or have a 0 for an assignment. We can quickly send a message using that message who function. From the staff perspective, a principal can message everyone whose lesson plans are missing before they're supposed to be turned in. So they, again, could quickly message the staff to make sure lesson plans get turned in. They can also use the Canvas inbox, which is just like an email feature inside of Canvas, to message individual students, and that log of communication stays inside of Canvas. And the final little bit of Canvas expectations is to make sure that we're following copyright law. If we're posting information to Canvas, we're sharing it with the district, we want to make sure we're following those copyright laws and rules. So we're also making sure our teachers have support. If we're expecting them to put these expectations into place in their classroom, we want to make sure we're providing resources. We're doing that in multiple different ways. We have a Canvas Canvas support training course that provides asynchronous resources, and we're also providing live training, Canvas 101, as the school year kicks off. So they have access to live training, and then they have access to those follow-up resources, which include, you see a screenshot of the buttons on the beginning level 1 piece. If you click on any one of those buttons, it gives you all kinds of great information, videos, quick articles that you can read to walk you through the Canvas expectations. And then just finally, we also are working with our campus leadership teams, instructional support teams, to make sure that they're monitoring Canvas expectations so that teachers are using and feel comfortable, and if they need support, the campus leadership team can reach out to our Innovative Learning team and get the support that they need. Any questions that I can answer for you?
Okay. How long are the teachers being given before they have to make sure their Canvas is updated? Are we giving them time to make sure they have time to get it done?
So just like our classroom walls would be decorated, we would hope that our Canvas courses are up and ready for the first day of school. So teachers have had the last couple of weeks with training and support.
Okay, so they've already had what you
information.
showed us.
Yes, ma'am. So
Okay.
we would expect from day one, but we also would give them some grace, right? As they're getting started and knowing what the class needs are, they might make some tweaks and suggestions or tweaks and modifications to their plan. But we would expect that we're hitting the ground running.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say thank you, because this was I asked for this information item, so I
Absolutely.
appreciate y'all doing this, and I know it's been I remember the community conversations, this feels like forever ago now with Dr. Jones, and we talked about the lives training sessions, and y'all implemented those, so I know we've come a long way, so I appreciate it all. And so I'm glad to hear. My only question at this point would be, are we going to go out for another survey, possibly mid-year or something, just to see how parents, if there's any more feedback that could help? I ask that because that is one of my things that I hear, because everybody uses it, right? And
Right.
so, and I haven't heard anything lately that's negative per se, but I'm just saying I would like to see, and maybe it would be all positive feedback.
We would love that.
Yes,
We have
so-
no concern about gathering feedback. I
Okay,
think that's
so
always
maybe
a good thing.
mid-year, would that be possible to just do a simple survey and see where we are or something like that?
Absolutely. I think the other thing I forgot to mention that I do want to share is we also have created a quick cheat sheet for parents. So we'll post that to our district webpage. We have a video out there already, but we do have a quick cheat sheet. How do I know that I have everything set up? So for example, I mentioned the notifications, announcements coming to your email. Parents may have turned that off 2 years ago, not realizing what they were doing, and they may have changed their mind. But we also have a lot of new students coming in. We talked about enrollment numbers. We have new kiddos coming in all the time. So we're gonna post a quick cheat sheet that a checklist for parents to walk through to make sure they know what the power of Canvas is and can do, and then they've got their settings set up correctly. So yes, but I think gathering feedback is a great idea.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate all the work.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you for the update.
Yes, thank you.
All right, there are no future action items to discuss. Are there any other items on the future consent agenda that trustees would like to pull for discussion at the September board meeting? Okay. It's 6:47 PM. We're adjourning the closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.082, the Open Meetings Act, to discuss personnel, land acquisition, or consultation with our attorney. It is 7:26 PM. We're now back in open session. We have a quorum. At this time, we'll take action on action item 10B, considering approval of an order calling a bond election. I think the administration had a presentation. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, trustees, first thing we'll do, we'll have Mr. Terrell Palmer, who is LCISD's financial advisor, come up and talk to the school district about our current financial state and bond capacity.
Great. Good evening. Again, it's Terrell Palmer, and we've got a little presentation. I know it's been a long night already. We won't drag it down too much. If we go to the first page, the takeaway, I know it's pretty busy, but the takeaway is really the bold number right in the middle where you can see what your outstanding bonds are. And we have over $1.7 billion worth of outstanding bonds. You know, that's down from $1.072 billion as we've paid off a lot of principal over the years. And you can see the interest rates ranging from everywhere between 2 to 5%. There will be some refinancing opportunity with these bonds as a lot of them were issued at higher interest rates, and we will bring those opportunities when they come about. Then you can see your debt service amortization. I would say that that's fairly conservative. I would call it a level debt service that you're making over the next 20 or so years, and then you have considerable capacity in your overall debt service after that, and we're going to use that capacity to try to keep our tax rate down for this election and the next election. Okay, next page. This is a little historical information. You can see you have both your debt service or INS tax rate as well as your M&O tax rate, and you can see that you've been remarkably consistent with your debt service tax rate, and then you can start seeing the beginning of compression. And I know all of y'all have heard about compression, and the state is trying to bring the ad valorem taxes down across the state, and they're providing assistance to you to bring that tax rate down. And you can see that you've gone from 106 to 97, 92 to 87 over the last several years. And we think that that will continue over the next several years, maybe not to the extent that we've had over the last couple of years, but we think we've got around 2.5 cents this year, as well as another probably $0.015 next year, as well as 1 cent the following year. And so that will be very helpful when we may be going up on our debt service side. And so we're trying to offset that decrease in the M&O with a slight increase in our M&O in our INS rate, hopefully keeping that overall tax rate, I think to your question, trying to keep our overall tax rate at around that 124. Okay, well, let's go to the next page. And this is a summary of a lot of the pages right behind, and we wanted to give you really 3 different scenarios. The first one is the smallest amount of the authorization at $826 million. These bonds would be sold very quickly, with the majority of those bonds sold over the first 3 years. Since we're selling these bonds very quickly, we have estimated an interest rate of around 4%. We think in today's crazy interest rate market, our market on our bonds is probably around 3.5% right now. So we've got a little bit of a conservative estimate on interest rates there. But with this scenario, we are expecting that our debt service tax rate would climb to the amount that's in your budget that you discussed tonight of $38.74 up to 40 cents in the year 2023-24, and then 41 cents in 24-25. And we think that that corresponds very well with, like I said, those remaining maintenance operating compression that will occur. And we're hoping to keep that overall tax rate with this scenario, as well as the next scenario, right on top of what our planned tax rate is for the next school year, for the 22-23 school year at 124. The next scenario is just all of the same information, except we've added another $150 million or so to the bond issue, going to $975. Believe it or not, $150 million doesn't do much for the tax impact. As you can see down below in the blue, that we still have that same 40 cents and 41 cents for those projected INS tax rates. The last scenario is really the largest one, obviously, at $1.7 billion. And these issues would be, again, sold over a 3-bond issue process, but a lot of the bonds are sold in the, the bonds are actually just sold evenly over the 3-year period. And so they're a little bit later than the first 2 scenarios. And so we had to increase our interest rate estimate to 4.50%, because we were worried about that 3rd bond issue being in 2025 and interest rates going up. And so we needed to give ourselves a little bit of headroom. As you can see, with this scenario, we've added about $600 million, and this does cause our INS tax rate to increase to 47 cents by the year 2023-24. we're hoping for good things out of compression, and, maybe there could be as much as, 7, 8 cents worth of compression remaining, but we're not sure. And so I feel very confident about the first two scenarios of being able to keep our overall tax rate around that 124. Scenario 3 will be very difficult, and we'll probably need a lot more help from the state to try to maintain that overall $24 overall rate. So the next page is really some assumptions, and I'm not going to take you through all of these. Really, the most important one is really the second bullet point, where it's talking about a 7% annual growth in assessed value. We do take that out a number of years. As you know, 7% looks pretty small compared to 24% in 1 year. And so, if we can maintain that 7% growth, and a lot of the experts think we can, we should be able to meet or exceed these projections. So, the very second to the last bullet point, the great benefit of Texas school district bonds is we do have an additional insurance policy basically over those bonds. It's called the Permanent School Fund, and you pay $2,500, and your bonds are not only rated your high AA ratings, but you get the AAA rating of the state on your bonds. And so it lowers the cost of your bonds. It's been a great program for all of the school districts across the state of Texas, and even some charter schools. So that's a great program, and it should be very beneficial to the district and its taxpayers. So to show you a little bit graphically on the next page, page 6, you can see you've got the gray. There's the 1.7 billion that we had talked about. This is the smaller scenario 1 at 825 in blue. You can see how that layers on. We actually do a little bit of capitalized interest to grow the annual debt service payment to match that of your taxable value growth. And you can see that that's the red line that goes across. And then hopefully by the year 2026 or 27, you can have another bond issue and take advantage of all of this additional future capacity, beyond that $825 million. Not anything really exciting on the next page. It's just the $975 million. Again, a lot of capacity as shown here in yellow that you can take advantage of in the years 2027, 28 with an additional bond election. It looks a little scarier with the $1.7 billion option, as we do increase our tax rate significantly, and we use all of that capacity to be able to pay for the debt service of the $1.7 billion deal. However, I will say that if we grow faster than the 7%, that will create additional capacity for the district in the earlier years, and we would be able to take advantage of that capacity. Also, there's, while we've increased our tax rate to 47 cents in this scenario, we do have additional pennies on the debt service side that we could go to create additional capacity. I hope you brought your readers, but the next pages are a lot of small numbers, but they really are just our backup to all of the information that I've just provided to you, and I'm happy to walk you through our presentation and the results in any detail that you'd like to see.
Trustees, what I wanted to say at the beginning is that we have a room full of experts. And so any questions you may have, please feel free to ask any questions so you can have a complete understanding about the decisions that we're asking you to make. And so we have financial advisor in the room, we have our bond counsel in the room, we have our bond office in the room. So whatever questions you may have, please feel free to ask as many questions as you need.
Terrell, could you go back to slide 4, I believe it was? And it talks about the 50-cent bond test. Could you elaborate on what that means?
Yes, there is a 50-cent test that you have to get approved by the Attorney General in order to have that bond issue approved by that office. It is a static test in that it doesn't really allow for you to use a lot of the growth and assessed value in calculating that test. You have to use kind of today's assessed value to do that test. And as the closer you get to the 50-cent rate, the closer, the more assessed value growth that you use in your projections, the more difficult it is for you to pass that 50-cent test. And Lamar CISD has had to pledge its M&O funds in the past with other bond issues. And while we've pledged it, we have never had to move any dollars from the M&O side to the INS for debt service. Jonathan, Frails was former head of the Public Finance Division of the Attorney General's office. He's seen the 50-cent test and in many versions of it, and he's very good with that. And while it's certainly a concern that your financing team will monitor, I think the risks are fairly minimal that the district would ever be in a situation of having to move dollars from the M&O tax, which are very precious and very limited to all school districts, to the debt service side.
Mr. Welch.
Regarding scenario 3, because the total bond amount are sold in series or chunks, why would we have to increase it from 40 cents to 47 in the same year if we were to just basically stretch that out over a longer period of time? So if we just sold this scenario between now and then that we would have in scenario 1 or scenario 2, but we waited a little longer, why would we have to increase it so soon?
Because a lot of it is sold very quickly. If you go to the final, to really the penultimate page, in the upper left, you can see that the amounts were 300. Did you follow me? Did you catch the very last page where it says scenario 3?
Yeah, I'm there.
So 371, scratch that. I was scenario 3. 500 and call it 50 million, 650 million, 615. And so we're selling almost more bonds in 2 years than the other 2 scenarios combined. And so it just puts a lot of pressure on the tax rate very quickly with those bond issues.
Is there a limit on the number of series you can go out with?
No, not at all.
I mean, could you not go out and say, the
6
first time we
years.
just want 200 million, and then we want to go out another 250 million 2 years later? Could you do that?
Absolutely. A bond election never expires, okay? So, you could have $1.7 billion worth of authorized but unissued, and those bonds would stay there until your board or some board in the future decided to sell those bonds.
Gotcha.
But, we have your phenomenal growth of 3,200 students is really putting the urgency of, we got to take this paper authorization and convert it to cash immediately. And that has the cause of increasing that INS tax rate very quickly.
Ms. Williams?
Is there a scenario where I could get our analysts and our shop to try to figure out a way to stage that? Maybe go to 45 and then 47? Absolutely. There are things that we could do if that was the will of the board. But we wanted to show you, what that ultimate rate would be, and the 47 cents is very close to it.
And to your point, and I think you basically answered my question, but we could do like the 6, but we just need it so fast.
Yes.
I mean, we just can't wait until we do it 6 times, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And fast puts a lot of pressure on the tax rate because you don't have as many years for that assessed value to grow and other things like that. And, comparison of, we have outstanding 1.7 billion. To have a $1.7 billion bond election, that you're doubling your outstanding bonds, but we're only increasing our tax rate by 7 cents. So you're fortunate to be in the situation that you are, where you have so much capacity at the back end of your current debt structure that allows you to do that and not have a massive increase of your overall tax rate.
Any other questions for Mr. Palmer? All right. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Stand by. We'll probably need you again. Thank you.
All right, trustees, so Mr. Buchanan's going to come up now and go over the different scenarios. First scenario, he'll talk about 2 different scenarios, and then just have a lengthy discussion about what the trustees would like to see moving forward.
Can I ask a question
Yes,
before he
ma'am.
starts?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Mr. Buchanan drive a bus today?
He did. Mr. Buchanan drove a bus today.
So I just wanted to say that's Lamar.
That's right. That's
That
Lamar.
Mr.
That's how we do
Buchanan,
it. That's right.
on top of everything, because we're short bus drivers, he drove a bus today, so I just think that's fantastic.
Thank you, ma'am.
I hope you enjoyed it.
Did you wear
I
the
did.
suit?
It was a good deal. I got to go to Austin and to Wessendorf, so, greeting parents and kids at the bus stop was, it's a good sight because sometimes you lose that connection with, campuses and families and stuff. So tonight we want to bring forth, before we bring you for the scenarios, we want to bring some data that we've been compiling. This data that you see in front of you is off the PASA report that we received this past spring, and this is off the moderate growth. So what we've done is we've taken every campus and we've color-coded it to make it a little easier to digest. It's a little fine print, but you do have it in front of you. We printed it out for you to be able to look at. So what we did was in the color-coded chart we'll explain. So if it's green, it means that the population of that student projections will fit inside their facility. If it's yellow, we're having to utilize portable buildings at that facility along with the building. And then if it is red, we have to do something, either rezone or add portables or build another building to be able to address some of the concerns. So as you look through the scenarios, what we've done in this is we've taken, if you'll look at Gray Elementary, which opened next school year, we've taken and built in that capacity, and it helps relieve Culver and Meyer. But if you notice, by 2027, it gets over 900 students within that facility. All the scenarios that we built so far, when you look at Humanak enrollment will continue to have to use portable buildings unless we were able to do something else, do some rezoning to be able to address those issues within Humanak. Huggins, you can see Huggins enrollment starts going up considerable starting this school year, and then it continues to pattern that way and gets to almost 1,500 by 31-32. Some of these buildings like Morgan that just opened, if you look by 25-26, they get to 958 students and then continue to grow. Tamaron, it's taking a lot of growth at that facility as well. Even some of these that we are planning to build in the near future, which one of them is Cross Creek West, which is just north of Lehman. It opens 1 year. It's just under capacity, and then after that, it goes over capacity and stays that way. Even some of these that we have that are 36, 37, and 38, you see the capacities and the influence that it has. So do you have any questions about the chart and the way it's laid out as far as the elementary schools go before we go to our secondary campuses?
How long does it take from bond being passed until school completion? How many years does that take?
So that was one of the things that Mr. Palmer was up here talking about is sales. Right now, once we get funded, it takes us roughly a little over 2 years for an elementary school. Our secondary complexes are taking anywhere between 3.5 to 4 years at our current method of what we're doing and the things that we're getting from the marketplace. The last meeting that we went to with the Houston General Contractors Association, the main electrical gear that powers a facility is 1 year from the time that you order it till it arrives. So some of those are creating some delays. But yes, sir, so it takes, if the bond gets issued in November, we won't get funded till the spring. So you're looking at 25 before we could open up the first elementary school coming offline.
And then for the high schools, say a high school complex, number 8, if that's passed by the voters in November, the earliest that would be able to open is when?
27. We have been exploring some different delivery methods, but we think the cost is considerable to those, but we'll continue to explore those to see if we can't shrink in that time frame. But we believe the summer of 27 before that complex get open.
And could you talk a little bit, part of the difficulty that we have with these bonds is that we've kind of been hit by a perfect storm of inflation, labor shortages, and just the pricing of materials is, we've had a conversation, is just astronomical. Could you talk a little bit to that and why it's taking so long to build schools and why the costs are so much more than they were 2-3 years ago?
So some of the things that we've run into is not only the shortage of materials that we're seeing, but a lot of it now is due to inflation, they've increased labor costs. So these labor costs have went up on the hourly side. They're talking sometimes that they went up $4 or $5 an hour per trade. One thing that they've told us is in the near future, even if we hit a recession and some of those supply issues come unclogged and those prices come down, they don't see the labor costs coming down at all. Some of the labor costs that are out there, you're not just going to pull it back unless there's a significant recession. The other thing that they're saying is, through the Houston General Contractors Association, is they're seeing that even if there is a recession, that it will not have that big of effect on the blue-collar workforce. The construction workforce and delivery drivers and things of that nature, there's just too big of a vacancy at this point in time. So what they're seeing in the cost is maybe within the next 1.5 to 2 years, you may start seeing the supply chain unclog itself, and those prices will come down, but they do not see the labor force prices dropping as we move into the near future.
Thank you.
And then add the fast growth factor.
Well, and we're not the only fast growth district in town, so everybody is trying to build right now.
Yes, ma'am. During their presentation to the districts and architects, there's roughly about $9 billion worth of school and public works bonds that have already been passed that will be issuing within the next 4 to 5 years. So another thing that we built out a scenario is with middle schools. Steenbergen is part of that. As you see it opens in 24 is what we're anticipating. It does provide some relief. But if you look at Robert's numbers, Roberts really does not see any major relief until secondary complex or middle school number 8 opens. Even then, it only sees relief for about 2 years, and then it goes back over capacity. Even though we open middle school 7, within 2 years, it goes over capacity and stays over capacity as we move forward. Then when we get to the junior highs, you can see the red just continues to multiply. Lehman Junior High, it gets some relief. And again, these numbers are based on catchment areas. It's not a full rezoning. So some of these numbers could move depending on how we address them through rezoning as we open these schools. But if Banks Junior High opens up, it opens up at 1,093. It gives some relief. to Lehman. But if you'll notice, it's up until middle school 8 would open, or junior high 8 would open to give Lehman significant relief, but it only does it for 2 years. And again, it goes back over capacity. And then by 27, 28, if you'll notice, we have significant number of our junior highs that will be over capacity at that point in time, and we will have to address it in some manner. With that much red, rezoning is only going to address so much. At that point in time, we would definitely have to adding portable buildings to multiple junior high sites as we move forward. And then the last group of schools that we like to talk about is our high schools. Our high school numbers, as you see this broken out, these numbers are a little different than was in the past report. And that is because traditionally we've opened our high schools as 9-10, and then the next year was 9-10-11, and then its third year it was all 4 grade levels. So because when Tomas opens, it opens at a 1,151, it gives minimal relief to both Foster and Fulshear. That's when Foster goes from red to green. But if you'll notice in that year before, they're at 3,700 and they only dropped to 3,527. And they continue to expand in enrollment until high school 8 would open. Then it drops below 3,000 and it continues to get relief, but then by 2030, it starts getting over capacity again. We have built in this model the 500 seat additions that we've talked about earlier in this as we move forward. But again, as you notice, by 27, 28 school year, we start having significant number of secondary campus, high school campuses that will be outside their building capacity. And we will have to address it in some form or fashion, more than likely with portable buildings. So before we go to the options, do you have any questions about the capacity and the data?
Mr. Buchanan, can you talk about the perfect storm and the cluster that's coming to the purple track?
So as we've been looking through this data and we've really been honing in on this, right now we're looking at possibly by the 26, somewhere in that 25 to 20, 24, 25 or 25, 26, to probably have a minimum of 40 to 50 portable buildings at the Fulshear High School, possibly 30 to 40 at Lehman, and an additional 20 to 30 at Roberts Middle School. So we're looking anywhere between 90 to 130 portable buildings at that secondary complex site to be able to handle this growth that's coming to that. Again, we can address some of this with the opening of Tomas, but it's only going to minimize it. If we try to spread it out, we'd have to add those same portables just at multiple sites across the district.
So if you go back to elementary schools, and let's talk about Hubenack again. And so if you see Hubenack, Hubenack doesn't get under 1,000 kids in the next 10 years. And so, and then Huggins, of course, we see Huggins is over capacity starting this year, according to PASA's numbers. They'll be over capacity for the foreseeable future. And you see Lindsay and Tamaron. And so if you go up to the middle schools next, please, sir. Roberts, and then junior high, Lehman. You see Lehman right now is 1,200 students, and they're not going to be under 1,000 students for the foreseeable future. And then we look at Fulshear High School. We're looking, according to these numbers, right now Fulshear High School is projected to be at 2,100 students, and 2,100 students. But then at the beginning of the 23 school year, which is pretty soon, they are projected to be 3,100 students, and then in 2024, 3,700 students. And so I bring that up because we have a perfect storm that has come to the north side of our district, to where we don't have any buildings in sight. We don't have any funding for any buildings in sight to alleviate the cluster that is coming to the purple track next year. And so when I asked Mr. Buchanan to talk through that, we're talking about, 50 portables, 50 portables just for the high school alone. And so I bring that up because we all know rezoning is a very emotional conversation. but rezoning is gonna be a necessary evil. But again, rezoning is we're not gonna be able to rezone our way out of this. And so that's why we're just having these discussions about the growth that is coming, or that has come, or it will be at Fulshire in the purple track next year.
And the other thing I would like to remind the board, this is our moderate growth model. So this is not, we've been hitting our high growth model for the last 2 years. If it does that, these numbers go up significantly.
And this is also if all the bonds pass correctly.
That is correct. That is,
Because if it doesn't, this whole scenario goes right out the window.
yes, ma'am. High school aid is based on being in the next bond. If high school aid is not in the November bond, it pushes that out a year, and Lehman gets close to 4,000. I mean, Fulshire gets close to 4,000 students in that building before, if we were to pass another bond 2 years from now, before we could get something open.
So again, the reason why I asked Mr. Buchanan to talk through that is because we don't need to sugarcoat anything right now. We need to make sure that everyone has a clear understanding about where we stand and what is coming to the LCISD. So we can have a frank conversation about the plan going to the future. So I've asked for us to pull off the gloves and have a very frank conversation.
If we looked at all the kids that are in portables today, the first day of school, is there, we once put it in perspective, how many schools is that of kids that are in portables, or could we even come up with that?
Well, I can tell you that we looked at it last year, the number of portable classrooms just at our elementary school level. It would take 6 elementary schools to be able to remove those portable classrooms from the elementary school level. Just the number of classrooms that we have at the elementary school.
So you're talking about 3 or 4 high schools to fix the high schools in the future.
Yes, ma'am. We've looked at this. We've looked at it in a lot of scenarios. It's a really complex problem. And with rezoning and building new buildings, we just can't get anything on the ground fast enough to be able to relieve the pressure that we're about to encounter, especially on the north side of the district.
And it's exploding over there.
Mr. Buchanan, you and I and Dr. Nivens, we've had extensive conversations about this, and we've explored every possible way of getting these schools built faster. Just taking the elementary schools, on your spreadsheet, it says max total capacity 34,000, and then the number of students, say 23, 24, is 21,000. So rezoning won't solve the entire issue, but is it a piece of the solution?
Oh, yes, sir. To be able to work work through this matter that we have in front of us, it's going to take multiple things. Rezoning, it's going to have to look at programming in schools and how they're being utilized. It's going to take a lot of effort to be able to try to smooth this out the best we can. But, I mean, as you see all the red that's on the paper that we have in front of you, it's a lot. And there's only so much smoothing we're going to get to before we start, hitting a lot of bumps. And when I mean by bumps, they're portable buildings.
I'm sorry, the number I gave was wrong. It was max building capacity is 29,065, and that includes all of the new schools, including the ones that would be built if the 2022 bond passes, with elementaries 37 and 38. But we're still well under that for the next few years, so it does seem like rezoning would be part of the way out of it, but obviously there's only so much you can do.
Yes, sir.
There's transportation issues. You want to have kids going to their neighborhood school.
So a lot of that would cause us to have to move kids from a neighborhood further away from their neighborhood that they're going to. They may have to pass a couple of schools before they get to the school that they would rezone to help level this stuff out, which is not, what we want to do with our families as we move forward.
And then the secondary campuses, to me, seem a lot more concerning, just because it takes 3.5, 4 years to build a secondary complex, and Tomas is already underway and won't be completed till 2025. And then high school complex number 8, which would potentially be included in this bond, if it passed, wouldn't be ready until 2027.
That is correct.
And so,
And there are some issues with the 2020 bond that we'll talk about in our option, but yes, sir.
and there's no way to build high school number 8 faster than 2027.
I was talking with our architects. They're in the back looking at prototypes and stuff like that. There may be a method to get it open maybe a little sooner, but they couldn't put a number on how much more it would cost. Because that's what the deal is right now. At this point in time, if you want to shrink the schedule, you got to pay a premium to do that. And they're thinking anywhere between 15 to 25% more to be able to start shrinking the schedule to run 3 shifts for construction workers. And that's if you can get 3 shifts to work at this point in time.
Cost more to build that building that way?
Yes, ma'am, it increases the cost by 15 to 25%.
And so this is part of the reason, like Mr. Welch, you were talking about, could you extend out when you do the bond sales? We need the funds immediately. One thing we did discuss is that you might be able to do bond sales for different parts of the project. So say if there's a new high school complex and you only need the funds to design the building, you might do that in the first bond sale and then extend out the rest. Could you talk to that?
So the plan would be is if the board chooses to add secondary complex 8 to the next bond is yes, we would fund the design, the geotech, the land for it at the very beginning of the bond so that we could go get those things and start that process. Because right now it's anywhere between 8 months once we have the land, and we have to go get the land as well. So that could be anywhere between 6 months to a year to go get land to be able to start the design, because once we get the land, then we can go do those services and then be able to start funding the building as we start the construction project.
And then one final question, the PASA report, this takes us all the way through the 2031-32 school year, but it assumes that we don't pass any other bonds other than 2022, right?
What this does is they only had in there up to secondary complex 9, and then we stopped off at the elementary schools because we wouldn't be opening these until the 26-27 school year would be the last one that we would be opening that set.
So obviously, it's more difficult to predict what's going to happen 9-10 years from now. But there's a very real possibility that we would need to go back to the voters, get more bond funding to build more schools for that time frame. So I guess what I'm asking is, folks that are watching this at home, they shouldn't look at 2031, 2032 and say, oh my God, there's no plan and there's going to be 1,100 kids and, or 1,500 kids in the elementary school. There's likely going to be another bond to alleviate some of these issues in the future.
Yes, sir. And again, I just remind the board, this is a moderate growth model. So if it hits higher and continues the trend that it has the last 2 years, yes, sir, these numbers will, start to move quickly. And because of that, we would have to come back and address them in some manner, probably within the next 2 to 3 years, if that growth hits the way it continues it has.
Any other questions?
So the next sheet that you have in front of you, we've built out a bond issuance. What you see in front of you totals $825.7 million. This is what the board has selected along with the Bond Citizens Committee. So at the top of it, we have the 4 elementary schools, 35, 36, 37, 38. The 500-seat additions to those high schools, middle school 7. What is not a part of that 825.7 is secondary complex 8. We had $90 million for land, $5.7 million for portable buildings, $43.2 million, it says safety and security. I would just remind the board that used to be our P1s, but because P1 Group A has only safety and security, we've just pulled the name of P1s off because that is just safety and security upgrades. You have the Brazos Crossing addition that's not part of it. Buses are part of the 825.7 million, and so is technology infrastructure. The one thing that I would like to point out is the 2020 bond inflation. It's an inflation factor that's part of that. It's $150 million. So just to explain that, within the last 30 to 45 days, we have gotten pricing from our bond projects, and right now, our 2020 bond, we cannot proceed with any project that we have not awarded at this time because we cannot afford the construction cost. So that includes Tomas High School, Banks, Steenbergen, Viola Randall Elementary, Willie Melton Elementary, Transportation, Police Station, Development Center, orchestra rooms, and along with some safety and security items. So at this point in time, that bond program, without eliminating some of those projects, we cannot move forward with any of those 2020 bonds at this time because they're over budget significantly.
But because of the perfect storm that Alex described earlier, President Hunt, yes, correct?
That is correct.
And so what would we have to eliminate to move forward with those projects?
So if we did not include the $150 million, we'd have to eliminate Willie Melton Elementary, which is 33, Viola Randall, which is 34. We'd have to eliminate Transportation Complex number 3, the police station, and the development center. So we'd have to eliminate those 5 bond projects to be able to complete the 2020 bond without having an additional funding source.
So you've taken them out and you cannot get them to where they need to be, is that right?
That is correct.
So you've tried to get them bid
Yes, ma'am,
on.
we've tried multiple ways. We have a CMA at risk that the board's approved for Willie Melton Elementary. We've looked at that, and right now it's coming in just over 12 to $13 million over construction budget at this time, which is 50% higher than the budget that we have.
So this money, we could put it towards those items and then get those built.
Yes, ma'am, that $150 million is, we've sat down with the bond program and all our architects and seeing what we're seeing from the marketplace at this point in time, and that's what it would take to complete the 2020 bond without eliminating any of the projects.
So the question, you said that high school number 8, that is not part of the 825?
That is correct.
And the Brazos Crossing is not part of the 825?
No, ma'am, and neither is the Career and Technology Center. What is a part of it is the laptop devices, the turf and LED lighting at Trailer Stadium,
Yeah, I see.
and the second football stadium.
Okay.
And the money to finish the 2020 bond projects are part of the $825 million?
It is not.
They are not.
That is correct.
So it's not an option? Doesn't sound like.
No, what we wanted to be able to do is this option 1 was where we've gathered all the information at this point in time. That $150 million has come up within the last, since the July board workshop.
So trustees, if you remember a couple months ago, we asked the board to reject bids for the police department because it was, I think, $6 to $9 million over budget when it came back. And so that was kind of the first signs that we saw, for the inflation. And so it's just, the longer we go, the worse it's getting.
So the Citizen Bond Committee did not know about, we did not know as a district to inform the bond committee of that deficiency in construction costs?
That is correct. Not knowing what the totality of it would be. Because the police station was a smaller project, we didn't know if it was just a one-off. But since then, we've seen the marketplace respond. And right now, construction prices from January until now have went up 50 to 60%.
The Citizens Bond Committee also, they just reviewed B, C, D, E. They did not review A, right?
That is correct. We went over it with them, but it was not, we went over all the details of what was included in it, but it was not part of their survey results.
So the likeliness of having to have a 2022 bond factor on a future bond is very likely.
Right now, what we're doing is the way we've calculated our prices is we did what will it cost us today, and then added 7% increase for every year until it opens. We believe that methodology is sound. We've consulted our general contractors and our architects. They believe that that's the best way moving forward because it's really hard for us to say 20% increases year over year because they've never seen it. This is the first time a lot of them have seen it in 30 or 40 years in construction, to say it's going to continue to go down this path. So that's the way we built this number. But Mr. Lambert, I can't tell you what the market's going to look like 3 years from now when I go to bid a project, and we may be in the same spot or the other way.
Mr. Buchanan, the Proposition A, you have 4 elementaries, 35 through 38. Then we have land. Are those land sites, 4 elementary sites and 2 secondary sites for future growth, not including those listed up there?
So what's listed here is we have land that we'll be able to acquire for 2 of those, but we do not have land for the other 2 or any future sites. So 37 and 38, we do not have the land or the funding for. So that funding will acquire both land for 37 and 38, but also the next 2 elementary school sites that we're basing off of. Because right now, some of the things that we're running into is we don't have a land bank, so we have not built anything out. That's what's delayed high school and junior high number 7 is just getting the land. So that's why we're trying to address these and at least getting a couple of sites ahead before the next bond, so that when the bond does pass, we have the land to go ahead and start the construction process.
Yeah.
Instead of like right now, if we decide to proceed with secondary complex A, we have to go get the land first, and then we can start the construction process. So we're trying to get ahead of the curve a little bit with that land and what we have purchased.
So, Mr. Buchanan, high school complex number 7 is a part of 2020 bond?
High school number 7 and junior high
7.
number 7, but middle school 7 was not. That's why it's part of the 2022 bond that we're looking at. And what we've done is, due to the growth in the red that you've seen in the capacity, is it's building all 3 of them at the same time, because they need to come online together and not staggered like we have been.
And so what we're saying, with the current inflation of the $100+ million, we won't be able to move forward with high school number 7 or junior high number 7 until that is addressed.
That is correct.
So then that's going to delay the relief for which schools?
Tomas High School, right?
Huggins, Tamaron, and Lindsay.
So the reason why I bring that up is because what you have in front of you, that model, is assuming that high school number 7 and junior high number 7 are open. So if high school number 7 and junior high number 7 are not open, then the numbers will increase for the campuses that they are supposed to provide support to. So this model just assumes that those will be open.
That is the model if we don't pass the 150 and we take out elementary schools 33 and 34 and only build Tomas and don't include 8 or 9. That's what the secondary model looks like. So if you'll notice, by 27, 28, it starts to turn red, and by 29, 30, it's red everywhere as we start to move forward.
So right now, we have some land to build some schools from 2020, but we don't have the money to actually build the schools.
That is correct.
Wow. Okay, we're in a pickle.
I have a question. So looking at whatever you call this sheet,
Yes, ma'am. It's our capacity worksheet. That's what we're looking at, is where's the capacity at as we move forward.
thank you, capacity worksheet. For Lamar, right now, we have the 500-seat additions for 5 of the high schools,
That's correct.
but we don't have anything for Lamar. So I was looking, they're in the red for 5 years and maybe beyond.
When we look at the Lamar and Terry site, what we
Yes.
do not have on either one of those sites is detention. So if we go to add or change things, Fort Bend County is going to require us to add detention. And we don't have, detention is,
The pond?
it's to control the flood. So as runoff water is to maintain the same amount of runoff water, no matter how much impermeable surface, which is concrete basically. So when you take out grass and you put in concrete, you got to put in a place to not flood the person next door to you or down the stream. So you hold the water and let it slowly leave the site, is what detention is. So if we're looking at something, adding that significant of a footprint to Lamar, we would have to start taking down current building and rebuilding it probably 3 stories. And by that time, you're looking at basically replacing Lamar High School to be able to get that kind of capacity and still probably have to add some detention on that footprint.
So what about, because I was doing some numbers, so if we did a 250, same scenario, instead of 500? Okay. So there's no choice for them except if we tear it down to add, we have to add portables.
We add portables, or again, that's part of the rezoning. If we can't add to that facility and we decide not to tear it down, we have to shrink Lamar High School's attendance boundaries, and those students would have to go to other high schools.
Got it, thank you. While we're contemplating, Mr. Latoul talked about tilt wall earlier. I believe I asked you that in one of the last meetings because he had emailed me that feedback. Would you remind us your answer on using tilt wall construction?
So tilt wall construction is steel and concrete. That's what it is. It's prefabbed and it allows you to raise it up. It does increase the likelihood of being able to speed up the project, but the problem is right now we're seeing increased pricing in concrete and steel. So it doesn't matter if I do a tilt wall, or if I do steel and masonry, or I do insulated concrete forms, all of it has the steel and the concrete in it. So all of them have the same materials that we're seeing price increases in all of the delivery methods. So everything that we've talking about with our GCs and our architects are telling us the same materials are being used, it's just using it in a different form. So the price increases you're going to see are going to be roughly the same across all of it.
Okay, so you've already done your due diligence on that.
Yes, ma'am. We went through that whole exercise. We spent probably 3 or 4 weeks with our architects and our bond department, just scouring everything we could do before we said the $150 million we have to have, or we won't be able to finish this. We were going through all kinds of value engineering and seeing what we could do, and that's where we ended up.
I appreciate you doing that.
So, Mr. Buchanan, I appreciate your efforts in getting this information together, because this spreadsheet with the green and the yellow and the red is very helpful and also obviously very concerning. And
Yes, sir.
it expresses the urgency of the situation, especially in my neck of the woods up in the north part of the district where we desperately need more schools. We desperately need to find more land, and we desperately need funding in order to build those schools and buy that land. And I'm sure that there are folks that might be watching this and asking, how did we get into this situation? And part of it is obviously that there was this perfect storm of inflation and labor shortages and difficulty. But I think that this is a situation that goes back several years, and that we should have had a land bank going back years, so that way we could adapt to this situation. And there should have been more proactivity in the past in order to avoid where we are now. But this is where we are, and so now it's time to play catch up. And we need funding in order to build these schools so we have safe facilities for our kids to learn. Any other questions for Mr. Buchanan?
Are we going to play with these numbers? We are, okay.
Sure.
So trustees, now so the first scenario that Mr. Buchanan has shown you is everything that the trustees agreed upon and or consensus with, and what the bond steering committee also came up with. And so just get your feedback and start having a conversation about what you'd like to see added, deleted. Now it's time just to have the conversation about moving forward.
Okay.
Ms.
well,
Williams.
All right, I got this. Well, at least mine anyways. Okay, so I would like to see us plug in the high school 8 complex, or the number 8 complex, and the 2020 bond factor. Okay, I'm going back to Mr. Palmer's presentation here. So we're already at 1.47. Mr. Palmer, at what point do you have us at 1.7 billion, bumps us up quite a bit. What is that between the 975 and the 1.7 billion? What do you think that threshold is where we start to really?
Actually, from some scenarios that we were running last week at 1.5 billion, we were still seeing a tax rate increase of around 46 cents.
A total INS tax rate of 46 cents.
A total, sorry, did I say increase?
Definitely a total, yeah.
Total INS tax rate of 46 cents.
Okay, so at 1.5, so basically where we would be with the 1 point, okay. Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Buchanan, what's included in the spreadsheet that's up there that's equaling 1.47?
It is 4 elementary schools.
It's the, it's the options column,
the last
right?
column?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
just column F.
Yeah.
So it's the 4 elementary schools, the 500-seat additions, middle school number 7, secondary complex 8, which is high school 8, junior high 8, middle school 8. It is 4 elementary school sites, 2 secondary sites, the portable buildings, the safety and security upgrades, $24 million for buses, $5.2 million for technology infrastructure, $150 million for the 2020 bond, technology devices, athletic upgrades to Trailer Stadium, and then the second stadium. And the reason that you see that second stadium pushed out is because of when those bonds sell. So as you talked, Mr. Palmer talked about being those bond sales, funding those, and when we can get that funding pushes that stadium out. So that's why that price is a little higher than what you've seen in the past, is because we went from the further out we have to go, depending on that financial model, it's what fluctuates the pricing for a lot of these projects. That's why secondary complex 8 went up slightly, is because of the model, we had to push it out to 27 and the market responses that we see.
So the CTE Center is not included in this, correct?
That is correct.
The CTE Center, that provides additional capacity at the high schools, correct? And what if it does, what does that look like?
So what we've discussed with our CTE department is that is a half-day program. So we're looking at a capacity of roughly 1,200 students. So we'll be able to pull 1,200 high school students off campuses. They'd be able to attend that facility until lunch, and then after that, those 1,200 would go back, and a new 1,200 would come in. So it would add a 1,200 seats across the district, and it'd be pulling from every campus, not just on one side or the other.
So that would potentially reduce, when I'm looking at the secondary, or I'm sorry, the high schools, and I see a lot of red a few years out, that would potentially reduce the amount of portable buildings that we would need to have there.
That is correct.
And then on the stadium, I have a question for Mr. Palmer. In the chart that you showed about future bond capacity, the stadium is 170 million plus 25 for the land, so 195 million. We're likely going to have to come back for more bonds in 2 years, maybe 3 years. Are we going to hit a ceiling of how much bond capacity we have, and is including a $195 million stadium going to potentially mean that 2 years down the road, we don't have enough bond capacity to build schools?
I really liked your capacity with the 2 smaller amounts, but if we go to the 1.7 billion, what you really are, your 2 areas of capacity is to grow more than 7% a year in your assessed value and/or increase the tax rate, the INS tax rate for that next bond issue to create capacity. You won't need very much capacity relative to how many bonds you have outstanding to fund a $200 million project, but you'll need some. But you'll have plenty of capacity with the 825 and I believe it was a 975 model.
Thank you. Mr. Buchanan, on your spreadsheet of high schools and what's going to happen on the north side in 2023, 2024, we can't build Tomas and High School 8 fast enough in order to avoid what's going to happen to Fulshear High School and Lehman and Roberts for that matter. There's going to be portables there. This is difficult for me. One of the things that I love about Lamar is that down the street I've got schools from another district, and the high schools are enormous. And one of the things that I love about Lamar is that the schools are smaller. But if I'm faced with, do I have a school that's maybe a little bit larger in actual building capacity, bricks and mortar, versus more portable buildings? It's not a question of, do I want to have 2,000 or 2,500 kids at a school? There's going to be 3,000 kids on that campus. There's no way to avoid that at this point. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So what would the price be if, not changing our master plan principles, but just for Fulshear High School, seeing that we know that there's going to be 3,000 to 3,500 kids there, keep them out of portable buildings, keep them safe in bricks and mortar, what would the cost be of increasing Fulshear High School from 2,500 to 3,000?
18.6 million dollars.
And how quickly could that be accomplished?
That would still be able to be accomplished by the summer of 2025. Because we would be able to add it to the 500-seat addition we're currently doing at that facility.
Is there the land there for it?
That is, we've talked to the architect. Again, that number, that 18.6 would, again, we'd have to expand the cafeteria again and probably add some fine arts classrooms as well to be able to handle capacity of that size.
So you're asking if, instead of just putting 500 more seat addition at Fulshear itself, just make that 1,000 seats?
Mm-hmm. Which I hate having that discussion. I don't want our schools to be that big. But if me as a parent, if the choice is between me having my kid in a portable building with a fence around it versus my kid in bricks and mortar, I want to have my kid in bricks and mortar. If the growth is unavoidable. And honestly, I mean, this discussion should have happened 5, 6, 7 years ago, but we're having it now. And if that's the choice that we're faced with, as a parent, that seems to make the most sense to me.
Alex, are you saying that because of why are you saying that? Are you saying that because of the physical safety of students in portables, or are you saying it for some other reason that I'm not gathering? Because I think that we're faced with the situation. Dr. Nivens has talked about getting out of the portable business. I don't see Lamar getting out of the portable business. Right. So we're not offering the kids that go to school most of a day in any campus in Lamar an inferior education because they're in a portable building. Mm-hmm. They got the same technology, they have the same qualified staff, they have the same ability to access the lunchroom and different things like that. So what do you mean exactly? As a parent, you would?
I think that from the numbers that I see here, it seems to be unavoidable based on all of the scenarios, including building things as fast as we possibly can with as many bonds as we can get approved. There doesn't seem to be a scenario where the growth goes under 2,500 in the foreseeable future. it pops down for a little bit and then goes right back up to 3,000. And this is if the voters approve high schools number 8 and 9. So if we're going to have students there, I think having them in, you know, and there's no way to avoid having that many students there. I'd rather my kid be in a portable, be in a brick and mortar building than be in a portable building long-term.
I'm with you, President Hunt, sorry. I think that's great. That's the first time that I'm hearing that or whatnot. So I think that's a really good idea. I mean, I know our goal is to always try to stay as small as we can. But sometimes, I mean, things are just out of our control. And so I think knowing that, because how much is a portable building? Typically, I mean, right now, I mean, I guess in
Roughly $250,000.
so times 30, who's got that?
Well, if you figure that's roughly 100, that's what you're looking at.
Well, for the high school, we would just be,
Well, you're also going to have to add them at the junior highs and those.
but I mean, we can't, we're not gonna, are you talking about adding on to all three? Or we're just talking about adding on to, we're leaving full, sure, so it'd be 30? We'll do 40.
Ms. Williams, you talking about the 1,000-seat edition? Or you talking about portables?
I'm talking about if we have to add 30 or 40 portables versus just adding 1,000 seats, like monetarily,
Roughly $10 million.
to
10.
$10 million versus having brick and mortar, we know it's safer, it will last, et cetera.
At
So
18.6.
I mean, I think that's a great suggestion.
I mean, if there is any possible suggestion to avoid the numbers getting that high, I think we take it. If there is any possible way to avoid that, we take it. But I don't think there is. At this point, I don't think there is.
And like you said, I mean, I know y'all have had more meetings than I have, but we have talked about this and talked about this. So it's, I mean, I feel like y'all have gone through every scenario.
Is there the physical land? And are we okay if we were to do that as far as utilities and everything?
Yes, sir. We've already talked to our architects who've done the prototype and done those designs, and they said that yes, but after that, we would have to start doing something else after we went to 3,000. So if we wanted to go above 3,000, number jumps because we'd have to add a lot more to the site.
Could you do 3,000 plus portable buildings? Because if we do 3,000 and we're at 3,600 kids, we're gonna still need portable buildings.
Yes, sir, because at this point in time, the layout that we've been exploring does not include parking. I mean, if we have to put 20 or 30 portable buildings, we're having to take up student parking or staff parking. It's got to go in a parking lot. We don't have
Then you're gonna have more staff.
we don't have room at the site to be able to put buildings and then to be able to secure them as well.
If for future down the road, you're talking about high school 8 and possibly high school 9 eventually, and are we having to go out and purchase more land now that we're trying to enlarge these schools? Or is our land still the same?
Yes, ma'am. So what we're
size?
we're looking anywhere between 130 to 160 acres, depending on our range that we're looking at. 130 is the very minimum, but no, we're able to accomplish this. But a lot of these numbers, we're having to increase the detention that we talked about as well in some of our areas when we do this.
And what did we usually go out for, about 130?
We try to get 150 because not knowing what the detention looks like.
Okay.
And other things that we may have to add, like at Foster, we had to add our own sewer treatment plant and our own water wells. So that took up more acreage as well. So a lot of that depends on what kind of utilities are around us and what's available to us.
I guess what I'm asking is, are we putting enough money here for land? Because I think that was part of the problem before. We were putting money in trying to make a land bank, and then the land price went up, and it depleted our land bank.
Yes, ma'am. That $25 million is what we're basically paying for secondary complex 7 plus inflation. So that's why we put that number at what it is. So if we're using our real market prices of secondary complex 7 and what it's costing us, plus the inflation of when we'll be able to get it.
So this 1.4 will keep us at that 41 cents. Try to at least.
46, I believe.
46. 40, so this 1.4 will raise it to 46.
So what we have to remember is, well, as Terrell and Jill talked about, was compression, but, you know, we can't guarantee compression. And so the compression is, you know, our M&O rate go down, and then we just basically swap those pennies and put them in INS, but we can't really depend on that. And so even though we say 46 or 47 cents, it may not be that because we may be able to reduce M&O and then just swap those pennies. But again, that's something that we really can't depend on.
Something we haven't, you know, I know, and we're all taxpayers here in this district, and so it affects us all, is that we have had a really good run of low taxes and the decline, and so,
And they buy and sell the bonds correctly.
and we A-rated doing, I mean, what did we, you know, saved us $40 million, what was it last?
On our last refunding, yes.
On the last refunding, so I mean, I know that y'all are doing a good job being good stewards. So I mean, sometimes we have to make decisions, but we're all affected. It's not like we're making decisions that don't affect each of us personally as well. So there's give and take.
Did
Just
you
wanted to
add in
remember.
what he was saying and see what the cost would be? No,
it-
Greg.
It will,
For the 1,000,
Uh-huh. Because that's going to raise that again, right?
yes, 18.6.
Struggle is real.
It's not easy doing this when everybody's watching you do it, too.
Yes, sir.
Doing fantastic
Yes,
job.
you are. I don't want anybody watching me doing Excel.
Yes, sir. 1.49, basic.
And
1.49 billion is what it would take it to.
That includes 1,000 seats at Fulshire?
That is correct.
I hate to ask this, but do we remove one elementary? I hate to do that. But do we need to get it down, or can we live with this as a board?
I think we need to try to get it in just because we're in this situation now because.
It's not gonna
the
get any
the lack
better, and
of
we're gonna have to come
forward
back.
thinking in the past.
And this is 2 years later, we're doing a bond.
Right.
And so 2 or 3 years from now, we're gonna be in the same predicament.
And despite how desperately I want that CTE center, it just,
cost will
the
be-
costs,
I know.
even 4 years from now, what's that cost gonna be?
7% each year, you said?
Right.
Every year?
So what year, do you want it to open 2030?
We'll see. 207.
Guys, all I know is that I went to one of the two citizen bond meetings, and the administration emphasized over and over again, we cannot go over $1 billion, and we cannot raise the tax rate. We are not going to raise the tax rate. That's what was emphasized in the second of the two meetings that I attended. And now we're talking, like, well, we have no option, we have to go over it. I think we're gonna have to start cutting things. I think we're gonna have to, it's gonna be very unpopular in Lamar. I think we're gonna have to not build a second stadium, and we're gonna have to utilize the high school football fields to do varsity games. And we're gonna have to sell a limited number of tickets for those games. Maybe rent stadiums at other districts to do some of our varsity games, but I don't see a situation where we can build a second stadium right now for I mean, the $169 million plus $25 million for land. I mean, we need to build schools. We need land for schools. We need, expansion of schools. And we have to finish the 2020 stuff. I mean, there's no option, so we have to add that 150 million in. So in my mind, that takes away basically the stadium. The 2020, the inflation for the 2020 bond items, I think nixes the second stadium.
So when we went out for, are we developing the I forget the total cost with the land, but the stadium cost, is that based on the same model that we used when we developed the cost in 2020 and put this on the bond?
So what we did was when we went out and looked at a stadium that we were looking at being able to have a track around it, which I don't know if that had it back then. Because when we start doing 3 and 4 different districts is what we're looking at. When we get to 9 high schools, we could be in 4 separate districts. You need a place to have a district track meet. So the second stadium that we're proposing matches. It has a football field, but it also has the track that goes around it. It has 10,000 seats. It has the band practice pads and band storage, and it has some CTE rooms inside the press box, and then it expands some of the concession stands for CTE. Other than that, that's what it at. So what we looked at was other people that went out for bonds in May, and we were looking at their stadium cost, and they built their budget in January. And if they had to pass those bonds, which they did not, they wouldn't be able to build their stadiums because the price went up 50% between January and July. So a lot of this price cost that you're seeing, I mean, it's driven by real market value that we're seeing and we're getting from everywhere. So it's not extravagant. It's nothing like that. It's what the price of building a second stadium would cost us.
And I think that cost has essentially doubled since we went out 2 years ago. And
So it's not going to get any
I
better.
think my thoughts on this are, one, we need a second stadium. We're likely going to be having to eventually use facilities at other districts. However, we went to the voters 2 years ago at 90-something million, and now we're on the brink of a recession. There's massive inflation. We're going back at twice the price and asking them again. I just don't think that makes sense, especially when we have schools to build.
So if we remove that stadium and the land, it puts us at 1.3. Mr. Palmer, how does that affect that rate?
You know, if we could get it to 1.2, it's going to probably put us in that slot between the 41 cents and 47. So whatever that would be, 44 probably, cents is something that we could work with.
Can I ask you, we've got the CTE center on here. And I'm sorry, this is a question for Mr. Palmer. Sorry. Mr. Lambert, I think you were the one that asked how would it affect it if we went out to 2030. It would inflate the cost of it because this takes into account some inflation costs. But if we pushed it out more, it would also help us on the tax rate because we wouldn't need to issue those bonds right away. So how would it affect raising tax rates if we went to the voters for approval of the CTE center, but we didn't plan to start building it for a few years down the road when maybe steel prices come down and things stabilize a little bit?
So in other words, approve of it now, but delay the construction of it for 4 or 5 years out? Is that what you're saying? Or have the election 4 or 5 years out?
Well, allow the district to have the flexibility to build it whenever things stabilize a bit, but likely that will take a while. So if we want to try to keep our tax rate as stable as possible and also make sure that we're waiting for inflation to stabilize, if we did have to wait 5, 6 years, how would that affect our tax rate as opposed to getting the bond approved in November of 2022, and then immediately issuing the bonds and starting construction?
You know, frankly, you know, the 200 million sounds like a large number, but when you're talking about having $3.4 billion worth of bonds outstanding 3 years from today, the 200 million is the tail wagging the dog. It's just not that big of a number. And so whether you build it in the 3rd year or build it in the 6th year, it's not going to have a material effect on the overall tax impact of this election. So
So basically, we hear you saying that it's not going to impact the tax that much. So put the stadium on, put the CTE Center on, because if it's going to raise the taxes right now where we're at 1.3 without it, it's going to raise it to 45 potentially. If we add those items to the bond, it'll keep it at 45 to 47. So that those potentially.
yeah, I think it's going to certainly any kind of cost savings and delay in that bond issue would help our modeling if you can deal with that. But it shouldn't have a material effect on the kind of the maximum rates that we're talking about. The 1.7 being 47 cents, and then the newer scenario at 1.2 or so being at 44 cents. We should be able to hold that even if you need the stadium done in year 3 or 4.
Well, right now you have the stadium, if we kept it on, not even opening till 2028, and high school number 8 opening in 2027. So, I mean, by then, if we don't have something in place, by the time we have 8 or 9 high schools, if you have to go to another district, then you're paying them to use their facilities. So, I mean, no matter what, you're going to end up using money one way or another. And I don't see things getting any cheaper. So, I don't know. I mean, I know it's an extravagance, and then again, it's a necessity at some point in our district. Because right now, we're having varsity games Thursday, Friday, and twice on Saturday.
Well, if I recall correctly, the last time I heard Coach Nelson speak was, I think this season, if we get a rain out this season, we're using someone else's stadium. But correct me if I'm wrong. I've slept since then.
Yes, sir, that's potential. We've got 30 games in 11 weeks. We've got games Thursday, Friday, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, some weeks, not every week, but some weeks. And on those weeks, if we have a rain out in any of those 4 games, we could bump to Monday, or we could be looking to rent another facility for the following day on any of those days.
Could you talk to the feasibility of what Mr. Welch's suggestion that some games might have to be played at high school stadiums?
Our current high school stadiums present 2 major issues with that. One is that we've only got bleachers on one side of the stadium, and so we wouldn't be able to separate our home and visiting fans in any way. The other issue is, and to go along with that, we don't have restroom facilities at those or concession facilities large enough to accommodate the size crowds we would get at a varsity football game. Our football stadiums at our campuses would barely accommodate one band, let alone both bands. So at that point, we would be looking to put our bands and drill teams on the field behind the end zones, and then we would be trying to figure out how to split those stadiums between potentially some fans or parents, and again, limiting tickets, as Mr. Welch said, significantly. Those of you who were here during COVID will recall when we had to limit tickets, because that was junior high football, and we had to limit tickets to those parents, and obviously those games draw a smaller crowd than varsity football.
So there's some significant logistical issues, not to mention the number of buses, band trucks, football team trucks, training trucks that would have to be on site. And we don't have the parking, security would become an issue then as well, we'd have to work through.
At what point do you think that's, because right now we're in what, 3 different districts?
We are currently in 3 different districts. I looked at that when the potential enrollment came up. With those enrollments, it looks like we would be in 6A for 3 of our schools. It looks like Foster, Fulshire will definitely be in 6A in the next realignment with those numbers. George Ranch will be on the bubble. And then we will have Terry, Lamar, and Randall in 5A, split somewhere between Division I and Division II. Their enrollments differ enough that they'll be split. So we will continue to be in a minimum of 3 districts. There is talk of 6A being split between 2 divisions, which could put us in 4 districts at that point.
And then when you open a new high school, they're usually in a different division too.
Depending on if they open in an odd or an even year, they could possibly go 4A Division I, as Fulshire did when they opened, which would put us into 5 districts.
Mr. Welch.
We are thinking about varsity football, and I'm a native Texan, and I grew up in Fort Bend ISD down the street from here. I understand Friday Night Lights. I understand how popular that is. Major League Baseball in the last couple of years has done a game every year in what they call the Field of Dreams after the movie. But they've played a professional game in a basically a cornfield in Iowa. And not all the people that want to go to that game get to go to that game. And they don't have all the bells and whistles that they have at a major league stadium. But they have TV cameras there so that anybody that wants to watch that game can watch it. I'm thinking that we need to maybe set a trend, begin a trend in Texas, that we can reimagine, that's a popular word in our culture these days, reimagine varsity football when you don't have the capacity to build a $200 million stadium, that you don't necessarily have all the other things that go along with the game, but you have the game. And you have a handful of fans, and you have a handful of, I mean, that is not a popular scenario, but we're talking about that versus schools in my mind. I don't see how we build this and also keep up with the growth, even in halfway keep up with the growth of the buildings that we need in the land. So that's why I offer that out. I mean, it's a radical idea in the context of the tradition of Friday Night Football in Texas, but it is an idea that could work. You could have the game. As far as I know, it would still qualify under UIL rules, I believe, if you had the right referees and you had the teams there and the trainers and the medical personnel. The game could still happen, and parents could watch that game.
How many, I know we're talking about football, but I know that the stadium touches much more than the football players. I don't even know how many. Is there a rough estimate off the top of your head how many students it affects that get to use that, from band to track to football, soccer?
So if we take an average
Lariats,
varsity football game and we start with one of those, we've got roughly 75 football players. So let's assume an LCISD team is the home team and we're playing a non-LCISD team. We've got 75 football players. Let's say 10 trainers, student trainers, so we're at 85. Then we add 300 band students, so now we're at 385. 25 color guard, so now we'd be at, what am I at? 410, if I'm doing my math right, 410. Now we throw in 30 more drill team, puts us at 440. 30 cheer, puts us at 470. And so at that point, have I forgotten anyone, Ram? ROTC, so we're looking at about 475 students on the home side alone. And that's in one game. So you double that if we're playing ourselves, which happens often. And then multiply that by 30 games in a season. So 475 times 30 is the number of students impacted at our stadium in one varsity football season. Then we talk about junior high football. We've started, last year we started our junior high football championship series, which is played at the stadium, where our 8th grade teams come and play one night. So that's our 8th grade A teams, accompanied by We invite their band, their cheer, if they've got eighth grade dance. So we allow them to come on one particular night to kind of see a miniature varsity game as well. And then we play our seventh grade A and eighth grade A championship games at the stadium.
So like, I guess so about 475 our side for one game.
Students.
Students.
And that
So
doesn't
I'm just
include
trying to figure
student
out how many.
section.
True. So I'm thinking Ranch Rowdies plus, and then like, so with soccer, I'm just trying to think how many students, because I know a lot of people assume it's just football, and I know that's just far from the truth. So I'm just trying to think in general, how many students, as Dr. Nevins said, like, will touch that new stadium, and will they get to utilize it, I guess?
So I did a ballpark estimate and came out with about 13,000.
Okay, thank you.
13,000 students in a year that touch Trailer Stadium, including special education, ROTC, track meets, the various organizations that come to the stadium for different activities.
And
So that's about a third of more than a fourth of our students.
Yes, ma'am.
And last year, you were able to utilize Trailer Stadium for things from outside our district.
Yes, ma'am.
That they did, because of the improvements we've made, it's made it more.
Yes, ma'am. We
accept-
hosted the Bayou Bowl, which is a senior showcase for football players. And we also have hosted 2 playoff games since we opened the new visitors locker room and the press box.
And do you foresee if we should be able to get this stadium, what it would add to our district and possibly even more revenue because people pay us to use our facilities?
We would be able to bring in some revenue through rentals. We would also be able to, of course, increase revenue because we'd be able to play games on Friday nights instead of Saturday mornings. We always get larger crowds at those types of events.
Yeah, it's not as hot.
How much income does renting out Trailer Stadium bring in?
Renting out Trailer Stadium for playoff games brings in a small amount of revenue. We rent it for roughly $2,500 in pure profit. Now, the renter also pays for the staff that has to run it. And the second piece of that is we profit in the concession stands. And that varies based game to game. Our larger revenue would be if we were to rent it to a non-school renter. And part of the reason that's capped is because if I have to go play a playoff game with one of our teams at another stadium, I don't want them to have an enormous rental fee. So it's pretty mirrored across the Houston area. So our rentals to schools are relatively capped. We do sometimes have outside entities that want to come in and rent it, and those are operated through our facility rental agreements.
How much, just so we have all the information, how much does it cost if, say, we wanted to rent Legacy Stadium for a game on a Saturday? Katie, how much would that cost?
I can get you that number. I don't have it in front of me, but if you give me just a little while, I can pull it up on my phone. I can get you that number.
Okay.
Because didn't we have to do that once because the lights were not ready?
We had to do that for a few weeks, a few years ago. Yes, ma'am. And so there's the rental rate, and then, of course, there's also the buses to get all of our students there because we're not playing in town, a decrease in revenue because we don't have as many fans attending, and all the other things that go along with it.
Do our students get bused, say, from Fulshire High School to Trailer right now?
They do. So Fulshire would have a shorter bus ride potentially if we rented Legacy Stadium, but George Ranch would have a longer bus ride.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a different question. So on the tax rate, if we kept everything, we added that complex 8, the bond factor, and the CTE center. So we just threw it all.
Repeat that, Ms. Williams, so Greg can put that
So
in.
right now, everything, I think that's, well, we changed the number. What did we take off? So if we put the stadium back on, and the CTE center. Okay, so we're at the close to 1.7, right?
Yes.
So you said we would get up to, in 2023, 2024, it could go up to 47 cents. That's what your estimate is here?
Yes, and we could certainly work with the finance staff and the staff in order to phase in, maybe phase in over a couple of years instead of it just going straight up to 47. If you wanted to have 2 years to get to 40, to go from 41 to 47, that would certainly be something we could work on, and I think it's doable.
So, I mean, for me, it's a question of, are we saying like we are never comfortable raising the tax rate even though we have all this growth? Or there's a limit to what we're comfortable doing? You know what I mean? Like, again, we're taxpayers as well, so we're talking to ourselves, but we know the situation we're in. So is it, we're just, because we lowered it, and we tried to let everyone keep as much money in their pockets at the time, that's the
I
goal.
think we might be comfortable with it, but are the voters comfortable with it? We have to really consider.
But are they more comfortable with the alternative, right? And so that's the gamble. We know what we need.
Kick the can down the road.
So, yeah, I mean, and it's just gonna be,
It's gonna be more expensive.
like, for
no matter
example,
what.
the second stadium, I mean, what is that gonna be in 2 years if they go up for the bond? I mean, people are gonna say, are you out of your minds with the $200 million stadium? So I feel like we have,
They
it's just.
thought we were crazy with a $96
I
million
know,
stadium.
and so, but it's kind of like just putting it out there and just being 100% transparent. We've done what we can, here's what we need, here's what the tax rate would look like, doing our best. I mean, we're in a predicament, but we know it's not gonna,
In the bond
even if the
committee-
steel and stuff goes down, like you said, the labor may never go back down. I mean, there's just so many factors, and so for me, if on a time frame with, like, the tax rate, so right now we're 2022, and you have here that it would be 2023, 24, possibly the 47 cents, so that's 23, 24. And then maybe some compression in there.
Yes.
I mean, it's just being realistic about what that might mean. But hopefully this would set us up not to have to go back, hopefully. Or is that not even a?
So that's the question I
In
have
2
for the
years.
team, because I want to make sure we're clear. When we talk about the plan, so say for instance, if the board decides to go with this plan here, how long, is this a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan? When I mean that, I want to qualify that by saying a 5-year plan means we won't go back for a bond election. We won't ask the voters for another bond for 5 years. Not this is a 5-year construction plan. So I want us to make sure that the kind of plan we're talking about is the same thing. So if we do this, how long is it going to take before we go back out for another bond?
2 years.
No
So
matter
With
what.
the 1.7?
That is correct, because if you'll notice, and that's why I pulled up the elementary schools, 39 and 40 need to come online in 2027, which means we have to have the funding in 25, which means we have to have the authorization by 24.
Ms. Williams, to your point, for me, as a taxpayer and as a parent of 3 kids in LCISD, when I look at this, I think of, and we've talked about this before here together, is wants versus needs. We have needs with a capital N. We have schools that we have to put on the ground. And if we don't put schools on the ground, then there's going to be kids in portables. And so for me, the question is, do you go to voters and you present everything that you actually need now? And if you don't, then you face the voters or the parents, the community members in the future, and they're gonna say, why are my kids in portable buildings? It's because the board didn't present everything that you actually needed. And so for me, I'm just trying to figure out on this list what's an actual need with a capital N. And for me, that's students learning in a seat. And $195 million for a stadium facility where that could potentially impact us down the road, could significantly impact the tax rate. That's a tough one. But the schools, the seat additions, the elementaries, the junior highs, the middles, the high schools, those are all needs. And so if we're trying to keep the tax rate stable, I think we, and I know everybody's in agreement on this board, but we just got to focus on needs. We just need to figure out what those needs are. What's a need and what's a want?
Well, I feel like as much as you're right, except that eventually we're going to have to build this stadium. It's going to have to be. I mean, if we're going to continue saying that extracurricular activities is a high priority for this, it's a need, that we want the kids in band, we want the kids in dance team, we want the kids in sports, we want the kids doing the different activities that keep them in school. And if it gets to the point that they can't participate, or we can't, I mean, they use the stadium for band contests, and they have to use that field usually on a Saturday morning. So he's gonna have to find it when they're not running a football game. So, it's eventually we have to bite the bullet, or at least let the taxpayers say, yes, we want it, or no, we don't. Because I'd rather take what they're telling me and say, okay, they didn't want it. And because we're not gonna put, and again, I go back to the bond committee, that's one of their top priorities. So either we listen to what they said, or why are we having a bond committee come on? I mean, it's one half dozen or another. And like you said, we're still gonna have to come out for a bond in 2 years to get more schools.
That is correct.
But until we can get ahead of ourselves, and again, the CTE Center is important because you're saying we could possibly be pulling kids out of the high schools, and that becomes like another help with our overflow. But I just, personally, I would rather the voters say, no, we're not going for that stadium, and tell us no, than for us not to put it on there and tell us what they want, and we can judge by their reaction to it. Because people I talk to want the stadium, and they've been calling me and talking to me about it. Do they want their taxes to go up? Nobody wants their taxes to go up. But I kind of trust you to make sure, and you, it's on your shoulders. But we're not even, okay, and my question is, and I'm sorry I'm taking up so much time, it's not even going to be open till 2028. How long does it take to build a stadium like that?
From the estimates that we're getting, it's the same as a secondary complex.
So it takes 4 years?
Yes, ma'am.
So it needs to be started in the next year and a half?
That's correct.
And we don't even have the land for it yet?
That is correct as well.
Mr. Buchanan, did you say that the bond committee did not know that we had a shortfall from the last bond?
That is correct.
And how much was that shortfall again?
$150 million.
I kind of think if they might have known that, not that it's anyone's fault, but that could factor into some of these decisions that they put on their list. Had they known we had such a shortfall.
That is correct as well.
Is Dr. Lazar here? There she is. I have a question for you. I think everybody, well, I'm gonna speak for myself, but I know we've had many conversations about the CTE, and and I know that's Dr. Niven's very important to him as well. It's very important to me. So I have a question for you. With our current facilities, can we still expand some of the programs that we want to offer, like on the individual campuses?
Not without restructuring what we're currently doing. We would almost have to move to an academy-type structure, where, like, we would have to say, this is the automotive technology campus, where students would have to apply to go to that campus. We don't have the facilities or the structure to house a large group of kids. And we're not, and the reality is too, is we're not replicating industry, where the goal of CTE should be to create this pipeline into the workforce. And by not, by building on every campus, we're not able to produce the facilities that you could by creating a center, where you would have one center and you would knock it out of the park with your facilities, essentially, if that makes sense.
So if this doesn't, if we decide to put it on, it doesn't pass, then we don't get to move forward, you're saying? Or we just restructure?
We would have to restructure, yes.
So there
ma'am.
is an option to restructure?
Yes, there's an option to restructure.
So we can
would
still
not
move
be able to
forward.
service as many students, so.
But we can still improve on our CTE, just restructuring?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
One of the things I know I've heard Dr. Nivens talk about is kind of a vision of having a CTE center as one piece of a more regional plan. So Dr. Nivens, if you wanted to just put some more meat on the bone of that.
Right. So the premise of that is that, you know, I always say, you know, if you're in this for kids, you're in this for all kids. And so instead of Lamar and Fort Bend and Katy all having the same services and the same programs, that Lamar would house, you know, welding and automotive, and then Katy would have the culinary arts and cosmetology. And then what you can do is rotate students and share students. So now you can have, instead of just offering Lamar CISD kids 5 programs, we can now offer Lamar CISD's programs, kids, 10, 20, 30, 40 different programs, if you're able to have a collaborative with all the districts around you. And so that's the ultimate goal and the vision that I have, is to be able to, how do we offer our students as many programs as we can give them, so now they don't have to make choices. And so we would just have a collaboration with all the districts around us. And so there's been some conversations along that side too. So.
But if others don't want to collaborate?
Then I'm gonna make them. No,
I'm saying because I know it's important for us, despite what other people want to do, right? And so I'm saying outside, other neighboring districts. And so I'm just trying to, like, we're trying to think of alternatives, like building 1,000 instead of 500, just trying to think of all these ways that we can get this done too, that if for some reason they don't vote for these or whatnot, right? So, so if we restructured, we could continue to move it forward and make it better, and also, I just lost my train of thought. What was I gonna say? Something we talked about earlier today. Sorry, give me a second. Great, thank you.
I'll bail you out.
Appreciate it.
1.3 billion, my staff ran the numbers, would be a total rate of 43 cents. So 1.3, that was, I know we've kind of moved on from that, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
Sounds better.
Okay.
So with that's a little bit less than 5-cent increase from where we are now. Do we expect the M&O rate to compress about that amount over that time?
Jill, do you want me to?
7 or 8 cents, I think you said, right? Left to go.
After this year. Yeah. So, yeah, the next 2 years. So we're going to go down 2.5 now, right? 2.5 for 23, 22, 23, right? And then, so we're going to go down 2.5 for compression this year, And then Jill's expecting another penny and a half the next year, and then a full penny the following year. Going down.
So really, that's just 2.5 pennies. Because the 2.5 pennies you're talking about now, we have already taken advantage of those, correct?
Yes.
I can't hear.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. So really, we're just talking about 2.5 more pennies over a 2-year, 3-year period.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
But
So if it was 43.
do you expect
that would
there to
bring
be
us back
further
down
compression
to
after that? Or at some point, does it level off?
45.
We don't know, there's a session coming up, so it's hard to answer that.
Okay.
We need a crystal ball.
Or a magic wand.
On the CTE Center, we had, and we discussed this at the last meeting, we had the opportunity to tour the Fort Bend ISD and Alief ISD facilities. And as we were touring it, Dr. Lazar was educating me about what some of the needs are in Fort Bend County. And one of the highest needs is health sciences. And we had a discussion about how essentially with our current facilities, we're a bit capped out in terms of the higher level courses that would enable our students to then go and immediately enter the workforce. We also talked about the fact that a lot of the programs that with our program and with partner programs, we have more students that want to participate in those than are able to. And so I think a CTE Center, by raising the capacity for the number of students that can participate in these programs, would allow us then to provide not only a benefit to these students, but also to our community, because we've got an extremely high need for health science professionals. And we have students willing to do the work, and we don't have a way to get them there. Ms. Williams.
Thanks. So I remember what I was going to say. Where did she go? There she is. It's Dr. Lazar. So okay, so at this point on the CTE Center, if we put that back on, it wouldn't open until at least 2028. So that's 6 years. So I know that we see the sense of urgency before then. And so what would we do in the meantime in those 6 years to improve our processes? Would that be the reorganization?
I mean, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. I mean, I think we would have to look at reorganizing some things, but again, we're still gonna be capped in some places. We would need to look at, I'm in conversations right now with University of Houston Sugarland campus. They have an incredible nursing facility. Looking at partnering with them with doing some dual credit through health science and stuff of that nature. And would be great to be able to do that, up until 2028 if we got a center. But again, you're still capped and confined to their hours essentially, right? Whereas if we had a campus that we could open, we could provide the dual credit on our campus and open up the numbers. But we would have to look at utilizing other facilities and restructuring a little bit until we could get to the point where we could open a center.
Okay, so we have options, and we wouldn't let that stop us from pursuing.
No, ma'am, we're gonna do what's best for kids, and we'll figure out a way to make it work.
Because either way,
Absolutely.
it would be at least 6 years.
Yes.
Okay. And I know that the CTE, I don't know if you were going to talk about the CTE at the, no. I was
No,
going to say,
she had the fee, the fee, one of the trustees asked her about the fee
got
for
it,
using.
okay.
Mr. Hunt, the answer to your question is in 2019, we paid a little over $12,000 in fees per football game that we rented out the two Katy ISD stadiums.
Thank you. Mr. Welch.
It seems like to me, the more and more we talk, and one, we're always comparing ourselves to other districts. And that gets people in trouble in life sometimes. It seems like we are trying to more and more become a junior college. school district instead of a K-12, it sounds like it. I mean, the things that Wharton County Junior College and TSTC and some of these other programs, post-secondary programs offer, we're trying to bring those down into the K-12 level. And I'm just wondering, at what point do we say high school doesn't need to be 12 years after, or 4 years, we just need to shorten it to 3 and graduate kids early and send them off into the TSTCs? I mean, because that seems like what we're building more and more in public education in Texas. It's not a bad thing. I don't want anybody to interpret this as a bad thing. It's just a thing that's requiring public school district to have more and more facilities and to mirror some of these other post-secondary things or secondary facilities. And I just wonder, are we getting away from the purpose of what we're tasked with by the legislature and by the Texas Constitution, which is to educate kids in a general diffusion of knowledge, I think the wording is. And it just seems like we're trying to specialize more and more and more. And it's requiring the taxpayers to pay more and more and more on every level. That's why I'm uncomfortable with it. And when we toured the A-Lee facility, their CTE center, it was very nice. I really liked it. It was very inspirational and everything, but I'm just wondering, what does that have to do with, learning government and learning English and math and these kind of basic things that we associate with a K-12 education?
Philosophically, what I'm seeing right now is we're in this situation now, and our kids could potentially pay a price due to someone's indecision or lack of decision. So we're sitting around these tables now, and we're thinking, it's not our fault, but it is our responsibility. And so with these students and with where they're going and like you're comparing our neighboring districts, I want our students to have a fighting chance at what some of the other districts and other areas across the nation are providing. I want our students to have facilities that will rival and that will be those premier facilities. And I want our students, the people are coming. We can't stop the people coming. So if we're going to provide this space, it needs to be top tier space. And unfortunately, it's not our fault. It's not anyone in here like sitting around these tables' fault for the lack of decision years past. But it's our responsibility now. So we've got to provide a space for these babies that aren't even born yet. If we're looking at 10 years out, some of those kids, they'll be going to kindergarten 10 years from now. We all that red up there, even some of the foster kids, I'm thinking about the kids that I gave high fives to, that were kindergartners walking in that door today. It's not our fault that we don't have those facilities, but it's our responsibility now to make sure that every single student in our campuses that will come through those doors, that will have a equal opportunity as somebody in a neighboring district or somewhere across the way. And one of the things you're talking about is not having the, are we providing those associate degrees? Yeah, we want to, if we can provide that opportunity for that student. I think we should step up and say, okay, we're going to give every student coming through those doors an opportunity to get something that somebody else is going to have. And at some point, it's going to cost more, just because, we've never first could have seen that it would cost this much to build a building. I don't know. Philosophically, it's like we've got to say, okay, what is best for every student coming through these doors? Not just, it's not like Niven said, Dr. Niven said, it's, all students. And so I think about those kindergartners I gave a high five to, they're gonna be in a lot of red.
Dr. Lazar, I have another question for Dr. Lazar. So we had a Zoom call with Representative Juton and Gates today. And so it was nice because Mr. Lambert and President Hunt, and we got to just kind of ask them their thoughts about the bond and what they're seeing with their constituents. And when we share, they're within our district. And so what do you feel like, so just some from the feedback that they shared, and I won't say who is from who, I'm just gonna throw it out there, but, and Mr. Buchanan was on the call, and Ms. Lug was on the call, so we were trying to really get a good feel. There was some concern shared about getting certified teachers from another district for some of the CTE programs. What do we see, like if we had our own building and staffing that building with the teacher shortage now, what are your thoughts, like what are you seeing with getting enough certified teachers if we had a whole building?
So the good news is you wouldn't see a big difference in having to add staff, if that makes sense, because we would keep the principal, the intro level courses at the home campus, right? So you would have 1 to 2 teachers that would remain for that program of study on that home campus. And then you would take the remainder of the teachers essentially and they would come to the center to teach. And they would be teaching like 2 sets of kids a day, right? So there would be more kids flowing through the center. Do you understand what I'm saying? Does that make
So as long as you're
sense?
saying there would not be a teacher shortage?
No, ma'am, we are staffed very appropriately for CTE and have very qualified teachers teaching our CTE courses.
So it may be the way that they are staffing, that district is staffing their classes.
It could be, yes, ma'am.
And then, as far as the regional center, I guess that's kind of, well, that's kind of, we've kind of already gone over that. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
I think Mr. Bates wanted to add on something to that.
If I may. Oh, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Ms. Williams, also when you're talking about staffing for our CTE department, one of the things that we can also look into in the future is filing for a District of Innovation. You all may have heard of this DOI as well. What that allows us to do is to be able to market more people, even if we did have our current staff to leave, market more people that are coming from the work industry to allow them to actually give those experiences to our teachers. So it's another way to certify teachers without them having to go all the way through the entire same process that other elementary or secondary teachers are able to get certified, and allows them to be able to come and work directly within our school district. So that's another opportunity that many districts take advantage of to make sure that our staff, for any areas of CTE, have those relevant experiences.
That's good to know. Okay, thank you.
I think we've had a really good discussion, an extensive conversation. Does anybody else have anything to add before we hear any motions? Any further discussion? All right, then we need a motion. There's no motion on the floor right now. Does anybody have a motion on what to include in the bond?
Do we motion each proposition or all total? Here he comes.
Our bond counsel, Mr. Frells.
Mr. President, members of the board, I think the best option for doing this would probably be lay out each proposition just as a group and kind of come to a resolution as to where you want to go. I don't know that you need a motion for each one. It's more of a just kind of reach a consensus. And then once you've reached a consensus on what it is, if you want to have a motion on the full package, and then we can prepare, make sure that the language is prepared, and you can go over that before you vote on that final motion.
Okay.
If that works.
Perfect, thank you.
So, Mr. President, if I may, so as any trustee decides to start talking about Proposition A, Mr. Buchanan can be up there and kind of still work the numbers to make sure that you're on track for what you want to provide to the other trustees.
Mr. Buchanan, can you scroll down a bit?
I think it's locking that top part.
I think the only thing you changed was the 500 to 1,000.
We added the 8
And the
complex and the
150,000.
2020
million.
bond factor. Yeah, so everything is in there now, plus the extra 500, right?
Are there any objections or discussion to the
Yes,
way?
sir.
Oh, yes, sir.
If you want to look at your sheet, just so everybody's on the same
Oh,
page, the
Oh.
500 seat additions, that dollar amount changed. We increased it by 18.6 because the discussion was to put 1,000 at Fulsher.
Yes.
So that number changed on your sheet. High school 8 carried over. And the $150 million for 2020. Those are the 3 changes that was made in Prop A from what the handout that you have in front of you.
So we did not add Francis Cross.
No,
And you-
ma'am, we did
you-
not.
You did put high school 8 in?
Yes, ma'am.
So what's the total on that, with that? With
It
that?
is $1,271,964,885.
And that includes the 2020 money?
That is correct.
To make up the 2020 bond?
That is correct, sir.
So it's,
Are there any objections or discussion on Prop A?
I do have one question. If we change the seat additions for Fulsher to 1,000, does that help us out? I mean, it's not gonna be maybe substantial, but in the portable section? Or is not gonna affect that number if we don't need the extra 40 portables? I
Yes,
mean,
ma'am, it
But
would
we'll
reduce-
still need them in other schools.
We may still need them there, but it would reduce it probably by 20, half. So cut half the number of portables that we need at the facility.
so it'd be like, so would we go ahead and adjust that if we're gonna do the 1,000?
you're gonna need the
We would
portables
still need
somewhere
them.
else.
But he said it would cut the number,
And Fulsher can have, but we would still need them other places in the district.
so we leave this number alone?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay.
So you're not looking for a motion at this time, you're just looking for consensus.
Yeah, so what we'll do is, we'll see if we can reach consensus on it. If there's something that we can't, if Mr. Frells is in here. We'll see if we can reach consensus. If we can't reach consensus, like if somebody has an objection to one or more of the items on here, then we could vote on that. And then ultimately, we're going to take a look at the full package, and we're going to approve that. And then we're going to take a short break. You're going to write up the bond proposition language. Then we're going to resume, we'll discuss it with you in closed session. And then we will come back and approve the written proposition language.
Yeah, the final approval of the order, which is what calls the election, would happen after you've reviewed what the final proposition language looks like in order to ensure that you agree with that language. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Is there consensus on Prop A as it's listed on the screen right now?
Ms. Buchanan, can you go through each item again on Prop A?
So will Proposition A, as it sits now, is 4 elementary schools, 35, 36, 37, and 38. It's 500 seat additions at Foster, George Ranch, Randall, and Tomas High School with a 1,000 seat addition at Fulsher. It is middle school number 7. It is high school complex number 8 that includes high school number 8, junior high number 8, middle school number 8. It includes 6 land sites, 4 elementary, 2 secondary, portable buildings at $5.7 million, safety and security upgrades at $43.2 million, transportation buses at $24 million, technology infrastructure at $58.2, and a bond factor for the 2020 bond, which is our inflation of $150 million.
And that's for a total of how much again?
At the top, it's $1,271,964,885.
Good. And if you could get that 150 million, how fast could we start getting back on the 2020 train?
So if the 150 million gets approved in November, what we would end up doing is we'd be setting aside, because we're going to continue the design of the high school and the junior high and Steenbergen is what we move forward with. And then if the 150 passes, that's when we would continue the construction, into the construction phase for those 5 projects that we talked about.
Okay.
All right. Are we all in agreement on Proposition A? Proposition A.
Okay,
Did you have a question?
no,
Okay. Sure?
yep,
Okay.
I'm good. I just, well, okay.
Nah.
Should we just put Brazos Crossing back in? I mean, is that,
So we could talk about what the needs are. We haven't discussed that.
I mean, if we have to put this staff here into a portable building because there's not enough room, that's a problem too. I mean, that's,
What are the updates?
So what's the situation at Brazos Crossing that necessitated considering this?
So what this is taking our land that we own adjacent to the piece of property and building a 2-story, maybe 3-story facility for our PD, instructional staff, professional development, things of that nature, to be able to bring people back in to provide those type of instruction facilities for them within the district.
Where are they now?
Whatever space we can find at a campus or with wherever else we can find it within the building. A lot of the times this room is used, but sometimes it's bigger than this, and we have to partner with churches and other staff to try to figure out places for us to put our staff together to be able to house everyone.
so if you added that back in, it would be how much?
I mean, as long as we're playing nickel and dime.
1.3. Oh, wait, okay, I can't see that far, but okay. Oh, I guess.
I mean, it's a
1.3.
small package, it's only.
Hence what Mr. Palmer, that was the 1.7, right?
So,
Oh, we're getting highs.
I mean, does that even matter? I mean, you know, is that gonna do anything?
Well, it depends on what we do with the rest of the.
But I mean, in the scheme of things, yeah,
I guess the question is this a need? And my understanding is that there is staff, central office administrative staff in portable buildings. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We also have central office staff housed on campuses.
I say leave it in.
Any objections to putting it in?
I prefer not. We're going over the $1 billion level without it, and I'm comfortable with that and the technology piece proposition, but beyond that, I'm not. I don't necessarily need to vote on it, but.
Okay. So we could vote on it. In my understanding, we do not need a motion and a second. We can just vote. And then we're going to vote on the whole package with a motion and a second, correct?
No, you would need motions. If you're going to vote, you would need motions.
Okay. So is there a,
So I think right now what you're doing is you're just establishing what you want the propositions to look like that'll go in the order that you're ultimately voting on. I guess there are different ways that you could go about it. One of it is if you want to do a motion in a second and just say what you want Proposition A to look like inside of the order, then that is a very efficient way and effective way to do it, if you'd like to.
Ms. Williams has a question.
So, that says 2027, would that, how would that impact the, oh, sorry, thank you. How would that impact, number one, I guess, the rate? Would that adding another 38 million on top of this? Okay, so that's going to, and then building-wise, like construction-wise, is that gonna set anything else back if we're making that a priority before, like, any of the other projects that are past that?
So when we built this out, it's depending on the number of amount that we've sold in the bonds. And we've worked with Mr. Palmer and Ms. Ludwig both as we looked at that, and we've worked very diligently to flatten that out. So we're looking at 3 even sales is the way we've built our bond packages So we should be able to make these dates that we have in here. So it's not going to delay anything. You're just increasing the amount that we would sell at that point in time. So it doesn't delay a high school, it doesn't delay those other projects, because those projects have a certain duration, if that makes sense.
I guess, I mean, I'm more on the construction side. Like, are we gonna be taking up construction crew for that project versus something else that's already in here? That comes afterward?
Will Brazos Crossing, for instance, construction projects take priority over a brand-new school project? Will we be pulling workers off of the school in manpower, yeah?
It would not. Right now, we're seeing a pretty good participation on our bid process.
Okay.
What it would allow us to do, especially Brazos Crossing, it's not a K-12 school, so it's not a typical GC that we normally use. There's certain commercial builders that build those type of office buildings and that type of stuff, that we would attract that type of general contractor to come in versus pulling it from our normal K-12 school building general contractors.
Thank you. And you consider this a need?
I do. It's if you prioritize, of course, our campuses are a larger need. But yes, we have people in this building right now who are in closets. We have folks who are housed on campuses. I really would like to get the people off the campus so we can have more campus space for staff and students.
Thank you. Okay. No more questions, Your Honor.
Okay, so we need a motion on Prop A. Ms. Brunzell moves to approve Prop A as written on the screen, which includes Brazos Crossing. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Danziger seconds. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving Prop A as written on the screen, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Aye.
This is a straw poll, basically.
Right.
This is not the legal vote.
So I think what we can do is, as part of that motion, clarify that this is Prop A as you would like it to appear on the final version of the order, which will be voted upon. Let's just make it very clear. This is not the final vote on the final order. This is how you guys would like Proposition A to appear in the final order. And then you won't, until you've seen the final order with the proposition language in it, then you'll come back, you'll take a motion on the whole order, seeing everything as it is. So this is in order to put it on, so I think the appropriate motion would be, this is to place this in the final order for consideration by the board.
Okay.
Repeat that one more time.
Okay, yes.
No, just the motion.
Yes.
Just the motion.
So the motion would be for Proposition A to read the $1,310,611,605, and for that to be the number to appear in the order that you will consider.
So Ms. Brunzell, do you withdraw your prior motion and put forward the motion that Mr. Frells just said?
You could just say yes. You don't
Just
have to,
say
you don't
yes.
have to repeat it.
Just say yes.
Barbara, you got that?
Is there a second? Ms. Danziger seconds. Any discussion? Okay, call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, raise your hand and say no. Motion carries. Okay. If everybody could turn your mics on, please.
Sorry.
Okay. All right, Proposition B. Is there a motion to approve Proposition B with the CTE Center as written on the screen?
Might as well stay up there.
And again, the motion is for this to be the way it would appear on the order that you will ultimately consider for approval at the end. So again, you're not voting to approve or disapprove the order as a whole. This is just for y'all to come to a conclusion of what you want on the order.
I'll make the motion
To do that?
I make the motions for proposition to appear on the order as stated here.
Proposition B.
Proposition B.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Danziger seconds. Is there any discussion? I think that this is something that could have a real impact on our students. Mr. Welch, I don't disagree with you that it seems like we're moving away from the traditional K through 12 model to some degree. And I think it's a good thing that we're providing more opportunities for students. I also think that a lot of times the traditional K through 12 model presupposes that every student is going to go to college, is going to have a secondary education. And I think that this provides opportunities for our students to immediately exit high school and enter the workforce with a good job, no student debt, and provide for our community. And those opportunities exist in partner organizations, and we have programs here. But this will just take us to the next level and allow us to continue to have further certification. So I definitely hear what you're saying. And I understand that you weren't necessarily saying it like it was a negative, but I do think that it's a good thing that could benefit our students long term.
I agree with you. It could. I think we just approach it differently. It's not something that we could decide as far as reducing the number of years in high school. It has to be something the legislature does, but we might be moving that way as a state. Maybe we need 3 years of high school and then send kids into the workforce or college. I don't know. It seems like if we can get it done without welding classes and things like that, which are good things, but if we could get it done without that, maybe we need to not keep the kids so long.
Any further discussion?
Yes. So I think, really been thinking through this one a lot. And so I think all of the factors are important that everybody said. And I think about the college tuition, how it has gone up so much. And so I like to use Dr. Niven's daughter as an example, who got a certificate as she graduated, and she's working through her certificate in college. So it's been an amazing experience, and I just think about that, where even if you decide to go to college, you could get a certificate and you could pay your college tuition. I just think, I think things have changed a lot. And I had the same thoughts that we keep keep going in, dipping into our K through 12, but I think that's the way things are going. And so I think, and somebody mentioned this to me years ago when I was running for the board the first time, that we should possibly convert one of our high schools to a CTE school, and so I think this has been a vision for a while. And I think it would be good to have it on here, just so, and if nothing else, so the voters can decide. So that's where I land on that.
All right, any other discussion? Then we'll call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
Nope.
All right, motion carries. Proposition C. Is there a motion to, I'm gonna try to say this without Mr. Fells getting up.
It keeps him busy, it's good.
He's over there helping her.
Is there a motion to adopt proposition language for Proposition C regarding technology as written on the screen?
I'll do that one.
Ms. Williams moves. Is there a second?
I'll second that one.
Mr. Welch seconds.
We'll give him that one then.
Is there any
Thank you, Mr.
discussion?
Lambert.
Hearing none, call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. Proposition D. Is there a motion to adopt proposition language approving Proposition D as written on the screen regarding trailer stadium turf and LED lighting?
I'll make it.
Mr. Welch moves. Is there a second? Mr. Lambert seconds. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Proposition E. Is there a motion to adopt proposition language approving Proposition E regarding athletics, a second stadium land, and second stadium?
I'll make that motion.
Ms. Danziger moves. Is there a second?
A second.
Ms. Williams seconds. Is there discussion?
I just want to say, I know that it's really pushing us to the limit, but I still think we need to allow the voters to take and decide if this is what we need, because we're going to need it. I mean, no matter what, in the next 5-10 years, you're going to have another stadium. And I don't see the cost getting any better. And it's just, we're going to have to bite the bullet and see when that next stadium's going to come up. So I just think it's time, and I know it's pushing us to the absolute extreme, and I don't like it, but I don't know how else we can get around it, because I can't see us building a CTE center and going to the 21st century of providing all these great scenarios for education, and then making kids play football at a small little field, as if we don't take respect for what they're doing, because that's their lives too, and what they're doing, and that, again, we are supposed to be the district that really puts curricular activity at the forefront to keep our kids in school. And that's all I'm going to say.
I agree. I think it adds a lot of value, and knowing that it touches 13,000 students is a lot of lives impacted. So I think it's very important.
I agree. It's to allow the voters opportunity to decide, and just we're putting it out there so that the voters can choose.
Yes.
Ultimately, we want the power with
Them,
the voters.
Any other discussion? Right, we will call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, raise your hand, say no.
No.
Motion carries. All right, we made it through. Anything else before we go into closed session?
Nothing else.
It is 9:56 p.m. We are adjourning the closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.082, the Open Meetings Act, to discuss personnel, land acquisition, or consultation with our attorney. All right, we are now back in open session. It is 10:17 p.m. We have a quorum. If everybody could turn their mics back on. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion. Let's see, I move that the order by the Board of Trustees of Lamar Consolidated Independent School District calling a bond election to be held within said district, making provisions for the conduct and the giving of notice of the election and containing other provisions relating thereto.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Danziger seconds. Is there discussion?
Alex?
Mr. Welch?
There's propositions A, B, C, D, and E. I wish we were going to vote on these here in the boardroom separately, but since we're going to vote them all up or down, I'm going to vote down. I don't support some of these, and I don't feel comfortable going out there and saying yes to all of them, that I really feel strongly against some of them, so. Just putting that out there. But if I was gonna vote on each one, I would support A, C, and D, which is the new schools and renovations, the technology, and the renovations for Trailer Stadium. Those are
Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no.
Nope.
Motion carries. Are there any further agenda items the board would like to add? Are there any upcoming meetings or events?
Toss this TASB. It's upcoming.
All right, very good. It is 10:19, the meeting's adjourned.